IB Nation, what's going on? Welcome to the Average Breakdown Podcast. We are live here on a Monday, which means that it's a little time for some Notre Dame recruiting hour. Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at irishbreakdown.com, joined by my guy, Mr. Sean Davis, recruiting analyst on the site, as well as the co-host of the Lucky Lefty Podcast. Make sure that you go over to YouTube, search up Lucky Lefty Podcast. You'll be able to find Sean. They go live very frequently, as well as you can go over to the CFB Nation podcast platform, wherever you guys go for your podcast. You go to Apple, Spotify, all that great stuff. Make sure you go check out their show. Sean, this is a very, very busy show that we have today, man, because for people that don't follow recruiting too much, this past weekend was a big recruiting weekend for Notre Dame. Obviously, spring practice opened up last Wednesday, the 22nd. We are sitting here now a couple days removed from a lot of very talented 2024 and 2025 recruits on campus, some key targets for the University of Notre Dame. We put a lot into this show, so we hope you all like it because we were kind of doing a little pre-show before the show, before this, which is why we're a couple minutes late here. But we promise y'all a lot of good commentary, a lot of good info, a lot of good intel. So, Sean, I'm excited, though, man. We're going to talk a lot about the intel that we got from this past weekend from the visits. Second segment, we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the recent offers that were extended by Notre Dame this past weekend on the football side of things, obviously. And then we'll hit the mailbag at the end for the third segment. And for people that are joining us live for the first time, or just a reminder here for you, mailbag questions can go in the chat at any time you see fit. Just hit that MB before the question, so that we can quickly distinguish between what mailbag and what just general commentary is going on in the chat. And and Sean, honestly, we're going to do a little bit of a different recap that we usually do today, right? For people that aren't on the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com, after the Saturday visits and practice, we put a huge intel piece. I think it was about like 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night or so, on a lot of different prospects or recruits that were on campus. Gave you a lot of intel, a lot of detail, and kind of a little bit of this recap. We're going to give you all a little bit more than we usually give the general public and a little more than we give the podcast platform. I would usually sit up here and say, go sign up to boards.irishbreakdown.com if you want a little more in-depth information. And you should still do that because we're not going to give you everything today. But Sean, there were a couple of very important players on campus this weekend. I think it all starts, of course, with Justin Scott, who is the defensive tackle out of Chicago, St. Ignatius High School, very prestigious Catholic institution in the city of Chicago, in Illinois, in Notre Dame's backyard. And for people that haven't followed that recruitment, Sean, there's been a lot of back and forth. You know, early on, Justin wanted an offer didn't come until pretty late. Then it looks like a couple months ago, he's on the verge of committing to the University of Notre Dame. He eventually pushes that thing back, wants to take a couple visits, make sure he's making a proper decision. Everyone in Notre Dame land is freaking out because they know that he was pretty close to committing to Notre Dame, obviously, right? So we're going to give you all a little bit of in-depth, not only about Justin Scott this past weekend, but a little bit more into just kind of the backstory to how we got here, right? We're going to give you all basically an experience that you would have on the message board on the podcast today. So we're going to do that. Sean, I know you spoke to Justin extensively, so I'm going to kick it to you in a minute, but just the format of this weekend. This was a very important visit for Justin Scott and Notre Dame. We had known that things were kind of put on hold from the visit perspective while Justin was finishing up his basketball season. The question was, when are you going to get him back to campus? Because let's be honest about this, right? After he's nearly committed to Notre Dame and he decides, I'm going to put this on hold, I'm going to go take visits, the initial response and your initial perspective is, that's not good for Notre Dame, right? Let's call it what it is. It's not good for Notre Dame. And then you see how this is kind of transpired, Sean. And I think it was very important for Notre Dame to get him on campus, to get some of that momentum back, to make sure that you have sustainability going down the stretch here. Because I don't think that Justin is going to take this guy into senior year. I think this one is going to be over by the end of the summer at very latest. I think that he will have his decision made. And for me, Justin Scott had a very important visit this weekend, Sean, and Notre Dame did a very I think it was a smart thing this weekend, Sean. That's how I would kind of phrase it, right? It wasn't just your ordinary come in, watch practice, go home, right? Like those deals. Tour the campus, go home. Notre Dame made it very prominent in this particular visit. Justin Scott would have amples of time sitting down with various members of the coaching staff and recruiting department. Very substantial time. And I think that there were real conversations that had this weekend, Sean. Really in-depth conversations about opening up to them and the family, Justin's family, about let's have a conversation here, right? Where are you guys at with this? What are your thoughts? What are the questions you have? And that was followed up, getting that comfort on the Scott side of things to ask those questions, to develop a deeper understanding, to develop a deeper relationship with these coaches and the people behind the scenes. That's kind of what it came down to this weekend, Sean. And I think that for me, and Brian wrote something about this on the message board, on the post, on the intel post at boards.irishbreakdown.com. He talked a little bit about we needed Al Washington to really step up in this recruitment, right? Well, and this is what Brian kind of put out there on Saturday night. He has. I will give Al Washington all the credit in the world. I know Brian did obviously on the message board already. There were some questions, but right now he has flipped the script a little bit on this recruitment. You feel a lot more positively about where Notre Dame is. At least I do following this weekend. I really think that the authenticity of this staff, the legitimate heart-to-heart conversations and opening up and understanding what each side is thinking, I think that hit it out of the park with Justin. I don't know if you agree, what you want to add to that, but I really think they did a tremendous job with Justin Scott this week.
I think I could throw this tidbit in there. I spoke to, and I think, put it like this, there were certain committed players who intended to be in town this past weekend, when they found out Justin was visiting. And I think the staff kind of said, no, you don't have to. I can speak to Cam Williams. I talked to him early this week, and I talked to him after Justin's visit. And that was something that kind of, was not said directly, but it was like, yeah, at first I knew Justin was going, so I intended to go. And then it was kind of like, no, there really wasn't a need for us to be there. So I think that goes to how Notre Dame chose to approach this visit, because there are a lot of different ways they could have made it the circus with everybody coming in, all the commits, hovering them around him, and kind of making it feel a little bit more pressure or a little bit more family oriented. Or they could have gone and made him feel exactly what he felt, which was a top priority as soon as they arrived on campus. That was the first thing he said. From the time my family and I got to campus, we felt special and felt like a top priority. And that came directly from Justin Scott. So when you hear that come from him, they hit the right buttons and made the right decision with the right approach for the weekend with Justin Scott. And Al Washington needs to step up. But let me tell you something. Just overall, Marcus Freeman is a superstar, man.
He is. Yes.
He's a superstar. Like, the recruits are happy to meet him and take pictures, but the parents are just as excited.
Yep.
Like, he's a star. And I think he took the bull by the horn with Justin Scott arriving. And then from there, after practice, other coaches stepped up. You talked about Al Washington, the intel piece before the visit that we put on the message board. We talked about Justin Scott talking about his growing relationship with Al Washington. And that's a great thing to hear. And we've been critical of Al Washington for certain things, whether it's this recruitment or other recruitments or the totality of recruitment at the position of defensive line. But you have to give him credit for how things have turned around. And I feel like he's going down swinging. Like, he's being very aggressive in Justin Scott's recruitment, even if he oversteps a boundary here or there. He's fine with that. He's trying to seal the deal and get this guy done, because I think Notre Dame feels like they're close. I think they feel like they're close, and I think that's why they chose to have the heart-to-heart conversation to say, where are you at? Let's be honest. Let us know what we can do to facilitate, to make you feel better in
Yep.
this area and that area. And now we know how to move forward. So it was a home run, grand slam, whatever you want to call it. The way they approached Justin Scott's visit was absolutely the right thing to do. And everyone that was involved, from Marcus Freeman to Chad Bowman to Al Washington to Al Golden, everyone played their part, and they did it very well.
And I'll say this too, Sean. They obviously had an impact on Justin. That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
You know who else's visit had a big impact on, which I think is vital for this recruitment? Justin's mom. I think that for me, Justin Scott's mother, I think, had a big opportunity too to get on the same page with the staff and to really become an ally, right? Like to be very pro Notre Dame, which, you know, she has been, right? But I really think that this was a major step of like, hey, this is the best place that we're going to show off and show that this is where Justin Scott can grow and be the best version of himself and answer any questions that you have, right? The opening of that conversation of answering questions isn't just for Justin, right? It's not just for Justin. It's about his family around him, right? It's about the support system. Are they comfortable with Notre Dame? Do they believe in Notre Dame? Is Notre Dame the best spot for Justin? Those things are the ones that matter too. So I think they also impacted his support system and his mom specifically, which I think is vital for Notre Dame in this one.
And I've been saying this for various reasons. You can go back to when he got his initial offer. We've been saying this on Irish Breakdown. It's going to take something extraordinary to get Justin Scott out of the Midwest.
And he even said that. He even said that to another site, Sean. He was like, "I don't want to go away from my mom too far," right? Like he literally said it. And it's
people didn't believe me. I've been reporting it, and I've been saying, look, this kid is going to take something extra special to get him out of the Midwest. And let's go back to when we talked to him early in January. This was before Notre Dame visited on the 14th of January, St. Ignatius College Prep. And his initial conversation with Irish Breakdown, when I spoke to him, it was all about Michigan and what they had done to that point to impress him in his recruitment. They were the lead school. All of a sudden, Notre Dame just bombards St. Ignatius College Prep with the coaching staff. Something happens. The bomb with Marcus Freeman. That was the offer he had been waiting on, going back to early in 2022. He gets the offer, and now, man, they just bombard the school. It's the emotional attachment. It's a school he loved. It's perfect. He knows it's a school that's close enough that his mom will love it. His mom is she works in the educational field. She loves education. That's important. A Notre Dame degree will mean a lot to his mom. Family driven. This is who we've been reporting this young man is. And everyone wants to keep beating the NIL drum. Sometimes there are just really good people that elevate things above NIL, like education, family, the things that matter to most of us. And it's hard to believe sometimes in this era that a kid would actually place those things at a higher value in making a college decision. And I've been trying to tell people, this young man is one of those guys. And he's been nothing but transparent and honest from the moment he started speaking to Irish Breakdown. There is nothing that he has told us that has not played out the way he said it would. Nothing. And I expect nothing to change moving forward.
I would say this too, Sean. I think it's a great note to kind of hit on for a second before we get back to kind of surmising, the weekend it was for Justin Scott, and then moving on to some other very important targets that were on campus, by the way. Like it wasn't just Justin Scott on campus this weekend. But I think Notre Dame fans have been hurt, Sean. They think about Peyton Bowen. They think about Dante Moore, who obviously NIL was a big part of their conversation. And we've hyper-focused on the couple that did, and we don't appreciate the Jeremiah Love and his family, the Jaden Greathouse and his family, the Braylon Jameses and their family. Yeah. All those guys were offered money, guys. All of them. And one of them specifically was offered substantial amount of money. We'll just leave it at that, right? But we just hyper focus on the couple that did, and we don't appreciate enough that there are others out there that aren't just NIL or bust.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to end it with this, Sean. I feel confident, and I think that you do as well. And I know you have, so I'm just assuming this. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But Notre Dame, I believe, is the leader for Justin Scott, and I think they have been for a while here. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame feels great coming out of this visit, but you are now going to have to withstand an official visit to Georgia, an official visit to Ohio State. I think he's taking a trip down to Miami at some point too. I think it's unofficially. So Notre Dame's not out of the woods yet, right? And no. Trust me when I tell you this, Justin Scott did not silently commit over the weekend. I'm putting that out there in full disclosure. He did not commit to Notre Dame silently over this weekend. So Notre Dame's going to have to battle over the next couple months. The point of the matter is, though, is that Notre Dame should be considered the leader, but they have to battle with some big names. And there's no doubt about that. But I think Notre Dame can withstand that type of back and forth and that type of pressure, man, because I really do think they're in a good spot right now.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that once he decided to back away from his January 31st commitment date, well, ultimately, he has told Irish Breakdown flat out, I was going to Notre Dame. That was my commitment.
Yeah.
And when he backed away from that, we talked amongst each other, and I said, Notre Dame has to fight. No, they have to fight. They have to be willing to go out there and hold on. So, I've heard people compare this to the Carnell Tate situation. It's apples to oranges. It's apples to oranges. There, to the relationship between Notre Dame and his parents when Marcus Freeman took the job was terrible. It was terrible. And it was just too much to try to build to even the fact that they got him back on campus in the month of April as a staff was a miracle, and gave you hope that they might be able to play catch up. But ultimately they couldn't. And then, some people think about, what happened with Peyton Bourne, like you said. Look, you just feel that way because, ultimately Notre Dame fans, we deserve 5-star athletes.
Yep.
You deserve 5-star athletes, and 5-star athletes eventually will start choosing Notre Dame. It's going to happen, and why not start with Justin Scott? There's really, the situation is really tailor-made for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Right? Catholic school, the staff, the coaching staff at the school are allies to Notre Dame. The alumni connected to Notre Dame at that school. He loves the school. We're waiting for the offer. Now it's time to put in the work. It's time to put in the work, right? Because you knew Michigan wouldn't give up. You knew Ohio State wouldn't give up. And here comes Miami, and here comes Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Come get us. That's what Notre Dame has to feel. Come get us. This is a relay race. We're out in front, and we have the best last leg. Come get us. Yes. They have to approach it with that confidence.
Yep. I think that's a good way to put it, Sean. So that's kind of Justin Scott, where that recruitment is currently. A lot of work that needs to be done, obviously, to close this one out over the next couple months to withstand some very good programs. But we think Notre Dame can do it. So, we'll see how this one finishes up. But a very interesting recruitment it has been for Justin Scott. I hope you all enjoyed a little bit more of an in-depth. We almost just went 20 minutes on just one recruitment here, Sean, right? So, again, boards.irishbreakdown.com, because for the rest of these recruits for Notre Dame that we're going to talk about that visit this weekend or over this past week, we're not going to go as in-depth as we just went with Justin Scott, because we'll be here all day if we did that, right? So, boards.irishbreakdown.com if you want the in-depth look into the behind the scenes of Notre Dame recruiting. And, like I said, we had it up Saturday night as far as everything we were hearing, a lot of different players' perspectives, a lot of great quotes. It was I thought we did a great job with that intel piece as a staff. So make sure to go pick that up there at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Sean, Jaden Riddell, who's out of Peculiar, Missouri, Raymore High School, top tight end target on the board for Notre Dame. Him and Carter Nelson are the top two targets at tight end in the 2024 recruiting class. They got him on campus, Sean. Notre Dame felt really good about where they were coming into this visit. A large part of it is Jaden Riddell's growing relationship with Notre Dame. A lot of it is growing relationship with CJ Carr, who was a quarterback committed in the 2024 class. And there's a lot of values that kind of match up Jaden's a very good student. He's a Midwest kid. There's a lot of things that kind of match up to being a Notre Dame fit into the program, right? So I spoke to someone very close to Jaden Riddell about the visit this past weekend, Sean. A lot of great adjectives, man. I love when there's great adjectives in a story, right? And that's what I got from this visit for Jaden Riddell. So one thing that they really harped on, the Riddell family, the first thing that came out was they talked a lot about Marcus Freeman, and they talked a lot about Jared Parker. Jared Parker was actually the first one that my source talked about. It was the first one. Jared Parker is obviously the tight ends coach, but he's also the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame as well, right? So that's a good thing to have when you're recruiting a high-profile tight end like Jaden Riddell. The phrase they used, Sean, was they exceeded our expectations. That's word for word what they told me. They had high expectations. Notre Dame exceeded what expectations they even had set forth. Campus was beautiful. They love the coaching staff. I feel very good about where Notre Dame is with Jaden Riddell coming out of this visit. Now, here's a timeline update, though. I was told that the family will not let Jaden commit to a school, silently or publicly, before June 1st. Will not let it happen. They want him to have a very clear, concise, and deeply data-driven perspective on who they're going to pick, right? He want every single data point checked. You went to these schools. What can they offer? What do the coaches bring to the table? What is the program going to give to you as far as a development plan? All those things are going to be considered in this recruitment for Jaden Riddell. So we will not have an update as far as commitments or anything until at least June 1st. At least. That being said, feel really good about where you are with Jaden Riddell with Notre Dame right now, Sean. We've talked about the importance of building that pipeline in Missouri. We talk about it from St. Louis perspective, but just Missouri in general, man. Keep targeting some of these cats, the Jeremiah Loves of the world that we talked about last cycle, for instance, right? Talk about Christian Gray in last cycle. Keep getting those types of kids. Jaden Riddell is a star tight end, really talented football player, and I think they really moved the needle with him this weekend.
That's really good to hear because, when you have a 1-2 punch like that, and I will say this, Justin Scott was aware that Jaden Riddell was on campus, and Jaden Riddell was aware that Justin Scott was on campus. Like they were aware that this was pretty big for both of them to be on campus this weekend and the magnitude of the recruiting weekend. But I'll say one thing. I got a glimpse of the young man, and it's pretty well put together.
Official height weight, Sean. I got some official height weights this past weekend from some recruits. Jaden Riddell measured in at 6'4", 233 pounds. So yes, pretty well put together for a high school junior.
That works. And the athleticism that he shows on film. And we said this, Ryan. One of the benefits of Jared Parker being elevated to OC would be the fact that in recruiting the tight ends that he's built a relationship with, this is your offensive coordinator. He is your tight end coach and he's your offensive coordinator, and how that might benefit Jared Parker. So when you tell me that the source you talked to, the first name they mentioned was Jared Parker, that goes a long way to saying or speaking about the relationship he's built, not only with Jaden Riddell, but it goes to talk about the data points and the information that he's going to be able to provide to a family that is going to be data-driven. And they're not going to allow their child to make an emotional decision, but they're kind of looking at it as very much a business decision.
Yes.
Yes. And if it indeed is a business decision, I don't think you want to really make business decisions, with Notre Dame, having two sides to really attack that business decision from academically as well as athletically. So they sit in good shape. I'm sure he's very comfortable with Marcus Freeman, Jared Parker, the surroundings, the way the full weekend. That was so much energy, man. I don't know if Brian, there was so much energy from leaving the pro day and the buzz of there were Notre Dame, Virginia signs like all over the place, like promoting the lacrosse between the number 1 team and the number 3 team. So the campus was buzzing. Students were on campus. We leave for the pro day. We come back the next morning, and with the big recruiting weekend thrown in there with practice, it just went to another level. So
Yep.
the energy around the campus was absolutely amazing. And I'm sure every recruit had to feel that. They had to feel the energy that was around the campus this weekend. So I'm glad Jaden Riddell was was able to take part in that. And I'm glad Notre Dame got in early. I'm all for a school like Notre Dame playing the early game in recruiting and jumping out in front and forcing other schools to play catch up. I think that's a tremendous way to approach, especially the 5-star kids and the big time talents in the recruiting classes.
And we talked about this a little on the Intel piece, Sean, but right now our vibe is that this is a Notre Dame Alabama battle. Like that's what this feels like to us. So, do with that what you will. Notre Dame needs to close obviously on a guy like Riddell, but feel good about where they stand currently, which is great to see, obviously, right? So, yes.
Who was that famous NBA coach that coached the Memphis Grizzlies during the playoffs that said, "Take that for data"? Oh man, what was his name? Tisdale. Coach Tisdale.
Yeah.
Coach Tisdale. Fisdale. I'm sorry. Yeah, I would line up all of the tight ends that are currently in the NFL for Notre Dame, and then show video of Michael Mayer shaking Roger Goodell's hand in the first round this year, and say, "Take that for data."
You're not wrong, man. Because think about it, Sean. Who Alabama wise, who's the top tight end prospect they've had? It's OJ Howard, and he's been a bust in the NFL. Like that's the facts, man. Them's the facts. You're not wrong about that, man.
So if it's data driven, it's down to Notre Dame, Alabama at that position.
Yeah. No, obviously, Alabama can give some other stuff that Notre Dame hasn't had recently, right? Like some championships and stuff. So, like, there's different pitches on both sides. But to your point, Notre Dame definitely have that pitch in their back pocket. Yeah. And I would say this: Riddell comes from a great family. Just wanted to throw that one out there for a second. Really great family. Think it would be a tremendous fit. But again, you're battling Alabama, so you need to go toe for toe, man. Finish it up. We'll see what happens, though. Next guy I want to talk about, Sean. A new player to the board, but things have obviously escalated very quickly. I'm talking about Anthony Knapp, who was an offensive lineman out of Roswell, Georgia, 2024. And for people that are just tuning in, we're going through 2024 recruits now, and then we'll end this segment with some 2025 kids that were also on campus because we had a lot of updates on this intel piece. Anthony Knapp, Sean, this one's interesting, man. Was just offered over the last week. I think he was offered last Monday, if I remember correctly, or Tuesday, something like that. So things have escalated quickly, man. And he's a player that Joe Rudolph had a great relationship with at Virginia Tech. Coach Rudolph had offered him at Virginia Tech, had made him a top priority for the Hokie staff. When he gets to Notre Dame, it seems like he is obviously the driving force to getting on Knapp because Knapp obviously was not a player that Notre Dame was really in contact with before Coach Rudolph got here. But they offer him. He quickly gets to campus. Sean, I'm going to put it like this, man. I think Notre Dame's going to be tough to beat here. I think you feel good leaving the visit, obviously. I think that everyone on the recruiting side of things and the coaching side of things are all on board with Anthony Knapp. I think they are. He's an interior. He plays offensive tackle for Roswell, but he's going to be an interior offensive lineman, either at center or guard potentially. A young man that we'll talk about in a little bit because we're going to watch a little bit of film on him, just a little bit. A kid that needs to add weight. He needs to be developed. But there's some baseline traits that are pretty dang exciting on this one, man. And it's a guy that Coach Rudolph, and we've talked about this, Sean, even before Coach Rudolph had gotten officially announced as the offensive line coach, my guy is recruited at a high level. So, there is some level of trust I look at and say, like, hey, he's got a pretty good eye for talent for the most part, right? Like, he's got some good ones. So, I look at that and I say, you feel good about where Notre Dame is after Anthony Knapp visited. This stuff is obviously escalating quickly. But I think Notre Dame's in a good spot, obviously, with the Georgia product.
I think on this show, maybe 3 weeks ago, Ryan, we had a conversation surrounding the hire of Joe Rudolph. And we were talking about his resume at the University of Wisconsin and how many offensive linemen were not highly regarded coming out of high school. But he was able to find different traits of guys that he liked and to not only bring them in, but develop them into big-time NFL caliber offensive linemen that were very productive on the college level. So
can I give you some trust?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Throw out some names, then you finish with your point, man. Logan Bruss is a guy that was like a 3-star recruit. Michael Dieter was a guy that was not heavily recruited. He literally got Ryan Ramczyk from a Division II school and then developed him into an All-American. David Andrews was a former high school tight end that he recruited that's now a starting offensive lineman in the NFL. There has been a lot of guys, to your points, that Coach Rudolph has identified, not just the top guys, but honestly, I would say that the most impressive part of what Coach Rudolph did at Wisconsin, especially, Sean, is he developed some underrated recruits. Like, I think that's, and even Pittsburgh, when he was at Pittsburgh, he developed Brian O'Neill who is now one of the better offensive tackles in the NFL. So, just to strengthen your point and for you to continue here, Coach Rudolph has shown that he can identify some good talent in the past. There's no doubt about that.
And so for that, when you see someone like Anthony Knapp get an offer from Notre Dame when he arrives on campus, and you point out all the things that you might take pause at based upon your first look at his film, well, you trust Joe Rudolph, who has the relationship, who's seen him up close and personal in a camp setting, when he says, yo, this is a kid that we should get on and we should bring into the fold. You trust that because he has a track record of not only being able to identify, those types of talents that might be underrated per se from a recruiting ranking standpoint, but he also has shown the affinity to know how to develop them.
Yes.
And as much as you want to get the 5-star guys, you still want to be able to get guys that can be developmental to go ahead and make that a perfect marriage with the big time targets that you get as well in the offensive line.
No doubt about it, man. You need good developers, obviously, but you obviously need a guy that has a good eye for talent. Because, Sean, we talked about this, man. This offensive line group in 2024 is probably going to be a little bit smaller than what we've seen over the last couple of years. So Joe Rudolph obviously is putting his name on the line with a guy like Anthony Knapp. We'll see, obviously, if he can develop him properly. So if he lands with Notre Dame, of course, right? Yeah. But we feel very good about where they are following the visit. Sean, let's now move on to our next recruit in the 2024 class that was on campus this weekend for Notre Dame. That is Jacksonville, Florida, Mandarin High School cornerback John Mitchell, who we've talked about it, right? Carson Hobbs, Leonard Moore. You got those guys down, and as far as commits in the 2024 class. You now want a third corner because Notre Dame really wants to see a guy that, could play outside potentially, but a guy like a John Mitchell who could potentially play nickel as well on the next level. Because that's a spot that we don't talk about enough, Sean, but like the future of the nickel position Notre Dame is a little iffy. I mean, because like you could say like Jaden Mickey maybe could be that guy, Micah Bell maybe could be that guy, but you don't 100% know who the future nickel is of the position for Notre Dame. So the Irish staff is making a strong push for John Mitchell. Coming into the visit, we believe that the last week or so, things have been escalating very quickly, and they really are developing a great relationship. We also believe that Notre Dame made a strong push for John Mitchell this weekend. Strong push. Right now, our vibe is, kind of talking to sources and just reading between the lines and, all the information we can gather. We think that this is probably a Notre Dame Penn State battle right now, which is both good because that means that John Mitchell, as a Florida kid, is willing to go up north, right? If the two schools that are on top of his list right now are Penn State and Notre Dame, that's the battle. So Notre Dame's going to have to finish this one, man. But I think that I thought coming into this visit, Sean, that Notre Dame had a shot at John Mitchell. Yeah. But I think leaving the visit, I feel a lot more confident about Notre Dame's chances with John Mitchell. So they'll have to beat a team like a Penn State, and then we'll see if anybody else gets into that top group. But it looks like a Notre Dame-Penn State battle for John Mitchell, star cornerback out of Mandarin in the state of Florida.
Yeah, some of the top targets at this position, you see them start to fall off the board as they create their top 5 list, and you might find Notre Dame not being in that list, or they're not seeing Notre Dame possibly on their official visit list. A perfect example is Emilio Agar, someone that put out recently his official visit list. Notre Dame wasn't on there, even though Notre Dame made his top 10 list when he listed that a couple of months back. And, Mike Mickens was in on him, but Mike Mickens is not one to sit around and wait on guys because he can go out and scour tape and find talent. And he's proven that. And once again, he goes out and we see the film on this young man and we see his ability to possibly play inside at that nickel position, which honestly, sitting at the pro day, Ryan, I understood why going in week to week with the receivers they were facing in this schedule this year, while we felt really good with Tariq Bracy being inside at the nickel each and every week. While we felt comfortable going in week 1 against a Jackson Smith and Jigba, we felt comfortable. All the prognosticators were talking about blowout, this and that. We felt very comfortable with Tariq Bracy lining up across from him, even though he played limited snaps, Josh Downs, and moving on to the rest of the receivers that he faced. And he showed that with his showing athletically on his pro day, why we should have felt that confidence, because he did a great job coming out, running in the 40, and his 3-cone was fantastic, and his vertical was really good. And he stepped forward and did what he had to do to show, I'm worthy of being drafted, and we'll wait and see if he can go in the late rounds. And he's going to be that nickel guy in the pros. Now, this is something that we talked about. We were going over all the safeties, and we saw diversity in the safety group that Notre Dame was going after. And the athleticism, we're saying, well, maybe are they looking at some of these safeties as a possible nickel, coming into the program? Like, I want to go into the genius mind that is Mike Mickens. What is he thinking when he's looking at some of these guys? And then, we look at this young man's film, and it's like, okay, I see what Mike Mickens sees in this young man. And hopefully, if it's Penn State, Notre Dame are two schools that both have a pretty good track record of defensive back development and getting them to the next level. So, Notre Dame really hasn't had anyone to go in the first round. I think, there's a possibility that ends in another year or so and a new trend begins. But you have to feel comfortable and confident in, Notre Dame pursuing this young man and them being in the race late with Penn State.
Yep. Absolutely, man. And Sean, an added bonus, potentially getting a kid out of Florida, because we talked about the struggles, man.
Like someone has to start the pipeline, right?
Yeah. Notre Dame's had some success, like working back to Anthony Knapp for a second. Like they've had some success in Georgia, but not consistently, obviously. Getting a kid out of Georgia would also be a nice, if you get a kid out of Georgia, kid out of Florida, you're feeling all right about yourselves, man. You're feeling all right. So, yeah, man, that's John Mitchell again. Potential Notre Dame Penn State battle right now. We'll see how things change, but I think Notre Dame did a really good job moving the needle this weekend. Want to move on, Sean? A kid that was on campus the longest of any recruit on campus this weekend. That is Logan Thomas, who is an edge, a pass rusher out of Katy, Texas, Paytow High School. Sean, this young man was on campus from the 24th to the 27th. So when we put up our intel piece, he was literally still on campus, man. Stayed until Sunday, right? Or actually until Monday, I guess, right? 24th, 25th. Yeah. So all the way till Monday. So this is where this one was, Sean. I think there was heavy intrigue on Logan Thomas's side of things. Notre Dame is, I think, prioritizing him. I think that he's right near the top of the list for them at the edge position. Yeah. I think Logan Thomas was very intrigued because Notre Dame obviously had a lot of success last cycle in the state of Texas, right? You got 4 players out of Texas, which was more than you had the previous 5 recruiting classes combined, which is just still such a wild stat to me. You have Leonard Moore in this class already. So I think there's intrigue on that department. I would say intrigue turned into legitimate interest this weekend is how I would phrase this recruiting visit from Logan Thomas. We think that Notre Dame made a strong move here, Sean. So when Logan Thomas starts setting up officials and really getting into the meat of making a decision, because he's another kid that I believe would like to make one before the summer is over, we expect that Notre Dame will be among the top 2 to 3 schools for Logan as far as when official visits timing start coming around, which is great. That's where you want to be for a kid like this, man. A kid that's been on the board, a few months now, but still not the longest of all time, right? To be able to continue to build that relationship, to make a power move with him this weekend, and to really potentially have an opportunity to be in the running of the top 2 to 3 when all is said and done. I feel like they did a nice job with Logan Thomas, man. Made a strong move for him this weekend, in my opinion.
That's great to hear. And anytime you spend 3 days in wintry weather.
Yes. I guess 4 days technically, right? 24th, 25th,
right.
26th, or 7th. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. and it couldn't have gone better. And
I don't think so.
I hate to reiterate it because I had the opportunity to be there and to soak it in.
Yeah.
Even if it was on a limited basis. And I'm telling you, there was an electricity this weekend. And it wasn't manufactured. It was, this is the campus. This is what Notre Dame is all about. It's not just football. It's the student population. It's the lacrosse team. It's the fencing team winning the third national championship in a row. It's everything that encompasses the spirit of Notre Dame. And I think, the young men that chose to come up on Saturday, they felt it momentarily for the time they were there. Justin Scott stayed a little bit longer than some people to have conversations and things that we talked about. He definitely felt it. And then you get this kid who's, once again, you're talking about a Texas kid.
Yes.
Texas kid.
Katy, Texas too, man. That's
Absolutely.
a hotbed. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's Logan. That's Logan with an H, by the way.
Yes.
Remember, you're spelling his name. But, that's a decision that you make that, to me, if I decide to spend multiple days in a place, because I don't know about you, like if I have a 7-day vacation plan, I'm ready to go home after day 3. I don't know how you feel, Ryan. I'm ready.
I agree.
I'm ready to get back home after day 3.
Sean, you know what else too? Not only that, usually guys from from a different area of the country, they'll come up and they'll spend multiple days in an area, but they'll hit several different schools, right? They don't usually spend 4 days in one school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that bodes well just in the preparation part of how serious Notre Dame is to the young man and how much he's considering them. That says a lot. And then to go ahead and experience the weekend that he experienced, and then to stay into Sunday, that's another flag. And I'm sure, because I think, if I'm not, Glenn James was there this weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
Should have been. Yeah, I
think
so.
Glenn James is there this weekend. So I'm sure his people had someone to talk to from the state of Texas.
Yep.
Had receivers to talk to from the state of Texas to talk about their transition and what it's like. So it was an overall, he got the full experience of Notre Dame.
Yes.
He got the full experience of Notre Dame, and it's just hard to beat.
So well said. Sean, I'm sure that you've had this too, but like sometimes recruits ask me, like, what should I expect when I go up to Notre Dame? And I'm just like, I can't explain it to you, man. I can't. I mean, it's just a different vibe there, man. I mean, you mentioned just some of the general population of students and the coaches and just can't explain it, man. There's just something there. Every time I go up there now, because I remember the first time I went up there, I think the first time was like 2016 or 2017 was the first time I got up to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like the first time, you're flooded with emotions, right? You walk past the grotto and all that type of stuff. You're just like, man, I can't, this is crazy right now, right?
Yeah.
But every time I go back, man, it's still there. I'm just like, this place is different, man. It's different. And some kids get that, some don't. But regardless, whether you ultimately end up at Notre Dame, I think most recruits would agree with that, though, that it's different. There's a uniqueness to Notre Dame. Which is why I always want to stay independent as long as possible, right? Keep that uniqueness, man. I don't want you to become uniform. Be different. Love that. Logan Thomas. So big weekend for them, Sean. One other 2024. Well, actually, I'm going to mention 2 2024 guys more briefly. One more about the visit this weekend, and then one that was actually on campus during the week this past recruiting week that I think really had kind of the envelope push for him. That we'll talk a little about. But I want to talk, Sean, about Chattanooga, Tennessee, McCallie School cornerback Marcellus Barnes, who does not currently have an offer from Notre Dame. But a young man that I can say for certain that Notre Dame has been keeping close contact with for several weeks, couple months now. They've been talking to him. They got him on campus. Sean, one of my favorite interviews of any player that was on campus this weekend, because Marcellus is obviously a Tennessee kid, knew about Notre Dame, knows about the prestige, all that great stuff. But man, he literally said, I was blown away and I was in awe when I was on campus. It was just a place that what we kind of were just talking about. You can't describe it fully. It's just like you just sit there and you're just like, man, it's just something different, right? And that's kind of what Barnes felt for me. He talked a lot about his ability to talk to the coaches on campus as well. And he mentioned Marcus Freeman. He mentioned a couple other the assistants. Like, he told me that the conversation he had with the coaches was different than any other coaches that he's talked to. It's just different, man. Like, they care. There's an authenticity to them. And they talk not only about the athletic side of things, but the academic piece and, the ability that kids can have to flourish at a place like Notre Dame on all avenues, right? And you really dive deep into that. And I think that both sides were really kind of blown away with one another. I really do. Now, Marcellus did not leave with an offer this weekend. He did not. But from what we've kind of been getting is that he's a player that the Notre Dame staff is having deep conversations about right now. Deep conversations. Because I think a lot of boxes were checked this past weekend. I think the fit makes a lot of sense. The question is, with what the cornerback board for Notre Dame is right now, is he a guy to push for? Is he a guy? Because I think that they would have a great chance at a guy like a Marcellus Barnes. And Marcellus, I will say this, Sean, he was very open about this. I know he's like, oh no, you don't need to ask this off the record. Like, you can ask me this, right? Like, I want a Notre Dame offer. It would mean a lot to me, right? Like, he wants that offer. He is expecting that offer. Like, he has expectations that he's going to get that because he thinks that that's what he's earned and what's in store for him and his future potentially. So I feel good about that relationship, but we'll see if he's a guy that Notre Dame pushes for, obviously, moving forward. That's going to be the question.
Like you said, I think you put it in the intel piece. Conversations are going to take place. And you know what? He's gained trust from us as a staff. I'm sure he's gained trust, with the coaching staff as well when Mike Mickens goes before them talking about a young man and saying, yo, this is someone, we might be interested in taking. And I definitely want a part of, the cornerback room. But it's good to hear that the experience and talking to the coaching staff was totally different than any other experience he's had talking to his staff. That's just another byproduct of Notre Dame.
Yep.
And, you might not get the top guy from Tennessee, but, if you have to settle for another very talented player from the state of Tennessee at that position, Marcellus Barnes wouldn't be bad.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be bad. So we'll see. We'll see. I love hearing kids say they're blown away.
Yeah.
I was blown away. But it goes back to your original question when they ask us, what should I expect? You just don't know. Notre Dame is mythical, man. Like, when you hear Notre Dame, you see the stadium on Saturdays, but you don't know what the campus is like. Like, it's
no
mythical.
Idea.
It's so mythical in a way. And that's like one of the beautiful things in recruiting. That you get these young men and their families on campus, and they get to take in what Notre Dame is all about, so.
And Sean, I would say this, we always talk about this, but the minute a recruit comes to campus, things can change, man.
Absolutely.
They can change very quickly, very, very quickly. So, to your points. Last 2024 recruits that was on campus, I almost said commit. Trust me, he's not committed to Notre Dame, so do not put words in my mouth, okay? Because I almost put it in my own mouth. Bodie Cahoon, Roanoke, Virginia, Patrick Henry High School linebacker in the 2024 class, was on campus on the 22nd. I had a deep update on that on the sites right after the visit. I would go check that one out because we're not going to dive too much into it, Sean, because we talked about it on TJ. Don't do that to me in the chat, man. Just don't do that to me in the chat, all right? Don't do it. He is not committed to the University of Notre Dame. I repeat, he is not committed to the University of Notre Dame. Don't do that to me, sir. But Bodie Cahoon, Sean, you guys are killing me, man. Sean, he had a great visit on the 22nd, met with both the Notre Dame football and lacrosse staffs because he is committed still to the University of Ohio State, the Ohio State University, whatever, sorry, blah, blah, blah. He's committed to Ohio State right now as a lacrosse player, but he is keeping his options open. think Notre Dame obviously had a needle-moving opportunity for him to answer a lot of questions, but go check out irishbreakdown.com if you want that full recap, because we're not going to get in that too much. A couple other 2025s. If we didn't go too deep into some 2024s, we have intel on them, and you can ask maybe during the mailbag about a couple other guys, but those are kind of the guys we really want to dive deep into because we got like a lot of intel on those guys, which is kind of where this conversation spurned from. 2025 kids, Sean. We're not going to spend as much time on these players, but we want to definitely hit on a few. Talon Taylor, Sean, who is a wide receiver, an Illinois guy, Geneva, Illinois Community High School wide receiver. Talon Taylor, who I know you know a lot about already. We were told, and look, 2025 recruiting has just begun pretty much. I mean, not technically, but technically speaking, this one it was a player that we know Notre Dame is very high on. The staff is very high on. Talon Taylor is a guy that Notre Dame, I believe, is going to push hard for. The words that kind of got thrown out on this one is needle moving, right? This one really moved the needle for a guy like Taylor, who's obviously an Illinois guy. He knows Notre Dame. We had sources on both sides of this deal, so on the Notre Dame side and on the Taylor side, that this was, again, needle moving, I think is the best way to put it, Sean. They really struck a good chord with him. I think that there's a fit that makes a logistical sense in this where we are right now. Talon Taylor's a guy that I know Brian Driscoll has talked about already a bunch over the last couple of weeks because he's a big fan of him since getting offered during the Pot of Gold offer event. So keep close eyes on Talon Taylor. That is one that we want to hit on briefly. Another, Sean, there was a legacy on campus this past weekend. There was a legacy. And we wanted to hit on him just briefly again. James Flanagan, who's a tight end out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. He goes to Notre Dame de la Baie Academy. I'm probably pronouncing that terribly at the B-A-I-E, however you pronounce that. My apologies. He is a tight end out of there, Sean. Was verified this weekend at 6'5" and an eighth and 226 pounds. So check the boxes from the size component perspective for a sophomore in high school. He, of course, is the son of Jim Flanagan Jr., who was a defensive lineman that played next to Bryant Young for Notre Dame, obviously, back in the day. Make no mistake about this one, Sean, and I know you know this, but just kind of putting this out to the world. This is not just a legacy push, right? James Flanagan's a good football player, man, and Notre Dame likes him a lot. So we talked to him a little bit. This was Jim's first time, his dad's first time on campus in like a few years, I believe, is what he told me. And he said that he was kind of joking around. He was like, man, Notre Dame's changed a lot since I went to school. Like a whole lot, right? Which is pretty funny to hear. But James talked a lot about –
That's crazy.
Yeah,
no,
man.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. He was like, yeah. My dad was like, this changed a lot, man. Changed a lot.
Illinois has changed a lot since I was there. So time moves on. Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. James talked a lot about Jared Parker, Sean, but he actually talked a lot about, and this is a cool little tidbit on him, the first offer that he received from a Division I program was from the University of Wisconsin. Sean, do you know who gave James Flanagan that offer? Do you know who extended that one to him?
Was Joe Rudolph looking at him as a?
No, this is after Joe was there. After Joe, but there's a Notre Dame connection here to the first guy that offered him a scholarship. Who else was? Gino Gaduli
there. Yes.
Was the first one to offer James Flanagan a scholarship. And, of course, they reconnected, talked a lot about Gino. This fit makes so much sense. And, again, he's a sophomore. So I don't anticipate James committing anytime soon. I think that he's going to let the process play out. He's starting to hear from a lot of other schools as well. But a great experience with his dad, if nothing else, right? And Notre Dame, I think, plans on pushing for James Flanagan. So keep your eyes on James Flanagan for sure. Another guy, Sean, a safety out of Monroe, North Carolina. Safety, Jordan Young. First and foremost, Sean, maybe my favorite player I've broken down in the 2025 class so far. My guy is a stud on the back end, man. 1,000-yard receiver on offense. On defense, he had 8 interceptions as a sophomore from Monroe. Notre Dame's looking at him as a safety, as is most schools, although some schools are also targeting him as a wide receiver. Great visit, man. Great visit. Family was there, mom and dad and little sister. There was a picture of them, Sean. I don't know if you saw this, but the little sister had the green braids in, man, which was really dope, man. It was really cool to see. I can't believe those are his parents because they look super young, but not to be a play on words with his last name being Young there, but Jordan Young for me, and this is just my opinion, I think Notre Dame shares some of the sentiment around him. That guy's a top priority for me, Sean, in 2025. That kid's a dang stud, man. And I think Notre Dame did a great job this weekend with Jordan Young, for sure. All right. Moving through the list, and we'll kind of just final thoughts on the 2025. Oh, here's one, Sean. Here's one that I know you know very well. Chicago, Illinois, Simeon, defensive ends. Christopher Burgess got on campus. Was not his first time on campus, Sean. Had been there before, but it was right after a game, and he said he couldn't really get the full experience of the game because he was tired and it was just kind of rushed. This time, him and his mom got on campus. Really loved the trip. Was verified at 6'4", 238 pounds during this trip as well. 2025 kids, who's only a sophomore in high school. Sean, I know you've seen this kid, man, and by all accounts, the visit went really well. But my guy is one of those first man off the bus cats for Notre Dame potentially if they land Christopher Burgess.
When I heard that Ryan had the measurements and he sent them to us, I was like, oh, really? I was like, okay, all right, because I've watched them. I watched them in the championship game for the public league this year. And, of course, Malik Elzy was the main event anytime you went to a Simeon game. But he definitely jumped out, even as a sophomore. He jumped out immediately when you watched him on defense. So,
yes,
when I saw that size, I said, okay, yep, he's going to be legit. And I see why Notre Dame, because sometimes based upon history, you'll see Chicago kids come in for a visit to Notre Dame. But you have to question, how serious Notre Dame might be about said athlete. But he's very well put together. Big man, this 25 class from a defensive perspective, you talk about AJ Espinoza, you talk about Nate Marshall, you talk about Burgess. Just those 3 kids defensively. That's a lot to talk about on the defensive line from Chicago in 2025. And Burgess might be the best out of all of them. He might not have the bigger name yet.
Yeah.
He might be the best out of the 3.
He might have the biggest skill set, I would say, right? Like if he hits his ceiling, the kid could potentially be special. The great thing about him, Sean, is he's still pretty new to football, man. He was an AAU basketball player, so he's very new to the game. So that's interesting, man. That combination is super interesting. Obviously, he is now focused his attention on football for good reason. So good visit for him. Ryan Gee, who was a tight end out of Milton High School in Alpharetta, Georgia, Sean. This one was another big move, I think, for Notre Dame. A dual threat tight end that can really block and has a big body. He was verified at 6'5.5", Sean, as a sophomore. 6'5.5", 239 pounds already, man. As a sophomore in high school, my guy's going to be 260 by the time he would get to Notre Dame if he ends up at Notre Dame, man. He is legit from a physical perspective.
Yeah.
He also has a relationship with Holden Stace. He talked about that. He saw Holden while he was on campus. He trained with Holden back in Georgia, which is pretty cool, right? So they went to the same trainer. He talked a lot about talking to the coaches. Jared Parker was a guy he talked about a lot. He talked with Coach Kaduli a lot as well. Was a guy that he talked about extensively. He also got to sit in a meeting, Sean, which he said was great for him. He said he got to see how the tight ends interact, see how Jared Parker – excuse me, a little bit of cough there. See how Jared Parker interacts with the room, how he really opens to questions, right? Like, ask me questions. Let's get better as a unit, as a tight end room. So Ryan Gee, I think, had a great opportunity to really understand the inner workings of being a tight end at the University of Notre Dame, which was tremendous.
as I said before, I look forward to that tight end room under Jared Parker. Well, I think we lost Ryan. But once again, the tight end room under Jared Parker is going to be fantastic at Notre Dame. Just allowing him to not only recruit as the offensive coordinator, I think you'll see the impact. And Ryan J, having that sit down, seeing him interact with the fellow tight ends and his relationship with Holden Stays is absolutely fantastic. 2025 wide receiver out of Scottsdale, Arizona, Cooper Perry. He was recently offered during the Pot of Gold. He had a tremendous trip. He talked a lot about Chancey Stuckey, who, by the way, and just watching the practices, the 3 practices that have taken place and the limited time we've had practice, no one is coaching harder than Chancey Stuckey in drills. He's doing a fantastic job. I think we saw the wide receiver room take major steps forward last year, and I think those steps are going to continue to turn into finally big-time production on the field. Cooper Perry got to watch that wide receiver core go to work this Saturday. His dad made the trip with him. His dad loved it as well. And his father is actually a Notre Dame grad. So that's a big-time ally to have in the recruitment of Cooper Perry out of Scottsdale, Arizona, Notre Dame prep. So, Ryan, that bodes well anytime the father is a Notre Dame grad when you're recruiting a young man. For him and for Jim Flanagan, that could be pretty advantageous for Notre Dame.
Am I back now? Can you hear me solidly now? Cool, yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Sean. So the great thing about Perry is it's actually his grandfather that went to the University of Notre Dame, graduated. No, you're fine. You're good. So he graduated from Notre Dame. He did not play football for Notre Dame, though, just graduated, obviously, but still obviously a deep connection there. I mean, basically Perry said, it'll be hard to beat, it'll be hard to beat Notre Dame for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what the vibe that you get from him. Nice to see, Sean, though. He was a kid that plays against not the best competition out in Arizona, but he had 20 touchdowns as a sophomore. And he's listed at like 6'2", 185. I was curious to see what he measured in at. He told me he measured in at 6'2", 187 pounds. So I'm like, okay, that's verified. Verified, man. Love it. So, yeah, that was good to see. Cooper Perry, another interesting target out of the state of Arizona. Which,
man, are there recruits out here catfishing schools, man?
Some are, man.
Some are. Listen to 6'4", 200. You get them on campus, they're 6'1", 175.
It happens all the time, man. It's weird.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Really is. Last one we want to hit on real quick was Dominic Kulak, who was a Elmhurst, Illinois, Immaculate Conception linebacker, Sean. He talked a lot with Al Golden. Al Golden was kind of showing him how he could potentially be a linebacker or on the edge on the next level. So he can play a little on ball, a little bit off ball. He was verified, Sean, as a sophomore linebacker at 6'3", 232 pounds was what Dominic Kulak weighed in at, so he's got a big frame, long frame, pretty explosive athlete, plays both tight ends and linebacker for his high school. Can do a little bit of everything. Very interesting football player, but he really talked a lot about the coaches again, and I think that Notre Dame moved the needle for him as far as, the visit. He really loved his visit there. So that's the 2025 recruits, though, Sean. That's it right there, man. I know we went through a lot of players there, a little bit over an hour in, but we talked about the 2024 players on campus this past weekend for Notre Dame, this past week and weekend for Notre Dame, as well as some 2025s. 1 and 2 for the next segment, Sean. Let's get into a little bit of film, man. Let's talk about some of the guys that Notre Dame recently offered, both in the 2024 and 2025 class over the last week. So I want to show a little bit of film, talk about some of these cats. But before we get there, if you could just hit that like button, share this podcast, notification bell if you aren't already subscribed to the podcast as well. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are always appreciated. Go on Apple, go on Spotify, all that great jazz. Really do appreciate y'all. But that's going to do it for the recruiting visit updates from this past weekend on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Sean, we had in total this past week, and if you guys aren't tapped into Irish Breakdown, I do every week now have a recruiting roundup that I put up usually on Sunday nights, if not Monday mornings, depending on how crazy the weekend is. I got this recruiting update up, although last night, and I talked a little bit about, I showed some film on 5 players that Notre Dame has offered this past weekend. We're going to go position by position here. And we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball, Sean. I'm going to play a little bit of film here. This young man, LaMason Waller, who is out of Hesperia, California, Sultana High School, Sean. Very interesting football player. Is being recruited by some as a wide receiver, being recruited by others as a cornerback. 2025 offer from Notre Dame. I think it happened last Monday or last Sunday. I can't remember. So this is what we're looking at, Sean, right here. We're looking into the boundary here for a guy, Mason Waller, listed about 6'1", 6'2", depending on when you look. Really, really talented, long striding type, man. Go look at his stats from this last season, Sean. Over 1,000 yards, was also a shutdown defensive back for the team. You see a little bit of the release package there too, man. This dude can get going a little bit, man. Pretty dang good football player.
I like that release. I want to watch him on a short range, though. I've seen him go over the middle, release, fade down the sideline.
Here's in the slot.
There we go. Let me see him in the slot. Good route.
Whoop.
Let's see you get some yak. Okay. Yep. Okay, playmaking ability. Yep, we like this, Ryan.
He's got something, man. He's got something. Yep. And I love the
player that Chancey Stuckey, when he showed up, talked about having those big wing types from a basketball standpoint that can play multiple positions offensively. And this is the type of receiver we're looking at right now. You can put him anywhere, boundary, field, slot. He's going to make plays.
Yeah, man. Yeah, he's a really interesting player. Sean, for a sophomore, I was really impressed by the release packages that he has. He's very smooth. I think he understands how to attack leverage, which is very unique for a player of his age. But, man, he was just a dominant football player this past season for his high school. And, yeah, I'm a fan of LaMason Waller, man. And him working potentially with Chancey Stuckey. Again, it's 2025. I have no idea if he's going to end up with Notre Dame. He hasn't ever been on campus before. So who knows? Oh, a little flip into the end zone there. I think that might be a 15-yard penalty. But regardless, man, really talented, long striding type. Gives me a little bit. I think he has more after catch ability. But, Sean, I see like a little DeVaris Daniels here. I don't know if you see that a little bit, man. But
That's a good call. That's a good call. Yeah.
He's got kind of that long striding element to him, which DeVaris was very good at. And
DeVaris is still putting in work up in the CFL, winning championships.
Yeah, man. He's one of those guys, man, where I'm always like, what could have been with DeVaris Daniels, you know what I mean, at Notre Dame. Like, I thought he was going to be a superstar. He's obviously a good player, but, you know, never really reached his peak for obvious reasons, right? But he's a very talented football player. There's no doubt, as is LaMason Waller, who we're watching again here. 2025 wide receiver out of California that was offered by Notre Dame this past weekend. Let's watch a couple more snaps here, and then we're going to move on to the next guy, because the next guy I think is of a little more pertinence for Notre Dame, because I think Notre Dame's obviously in a much different position with the next guy we're going to talk about. But, hey, man, Chancey Stuckey's offered a couple California guys too, man. I like a couple California guys.
Yeah, if you comp him to DeVaris Daniels, man, you're talking about a kid that you go back to that 2012 championship game against Alabama. He played very well against top-notch competition, and you thought the sky was the limit for him. You know, coming out of that game, moving forward. Unfortunately, he has some issues to deal with and never quite blossomed into some of that promise, but extremely talented. So if you're comping him to DeVaris Daniels, that's very promising.
DeVaris was a really talented player. I think some people forget about that, obviously, with just, you know, him never reaching his peak at Notre Dame, but that kid could play, man. Yeah. That kid could play. So LaMason Waller, though, could also play. So a little bit of a comp there for you, taking a look at him. Sean, the next guy is a player that is very pertinent to Notre Dame in the 2024 class. So kind of jumping around a little bit. We watched a little bit of film of Anthony Knapp before, Sean. I know me and Brian did, at least.
Okay.
Talented kid, a player that we think Notre Dame is pushing for in the 2024 class. We feel really good about him after the visit this past weekend. So I'm going to put up a little bit of film just so we can kind of take a look. If you guys didn't join us last time as far as what Anthony Knapp could bring to the table, But this kid, of course, is an offensive lineman out of the state of Georgia. A young man that, I think for me, Sean, nastiness is the thing that really pops out when you talk about Anthony Knapp, and you'll see it here. And for Notre Dame fans that are listening, because we know how important the 2024 class is for getting some offensive tackles, Notre Dame is still recruiting Gerby Lambert hard. They're still recruiting a guy like a Caleb Brewer who they think can play offensive tackle at the next level. This young man, Knapp, is a player that Notre Dame sees as an interior offensive lineman, a guard center type on the next level, a player that Joe Rudolph is very familiar with. And Sean, I like the nasty streak, man. Looks like a good athlete to me on film, but more than anything, he is a nasty, nasty blocker.
This is something that I think we can expect moving forward. And I think Harry Heastan would have been on the same wavelength even if he had stayed. More athleticism at the guard positions. More athleticism at the guard position to improve your outside running, being able to pull guys, get them out, get them up to the second level even quicker. And I think that was one of the things that jumped out to me on one of his first clips is how quickly he got to the second level. We understand it's the high school level, but the quickness where he got there, and then, like you said, the veracity he plays with and the mean streak he plays with, pretty decent feet at tackle. He can translate inside to guard. That's a pretty athletic guard.
And I even think, Sean, maybe not as much on the Power 5 level, but, for me, this is a kid that could play offensive tackle for some schools on the college level. Like, there's no doubt in my mind on that. But for Notre Dame, obviously, more fitting inside at guard.
Yeah.
But I love the nastiness, man. Good feet, like you said. The biggest question about Anthony Knapp is that he's probably about 265 pounds right now, or at least he was during his junior season.
Yeah.
So that weight gain, does that zap some athleticism? I have no idea. I have no idea how that affects him as a football player. But regardless, man, I do like a lot of what I see from Anthony Knapp. There's a projection here, of course, but there's no more projection than what we had with Joe Otting last year. There's no more projection with what we had the year before with Ashton Craig. The same type of projection here. But I would argue, this kid might be a little more talented than both of those guys, in my opinion. I think he might be. He's a smoother athlete, in my opinion, than at least Joe. And I really was a big fan of Joe Otting. So I like this kid, Georgia kid, which doesn't hurt anything at all. People in the chat, if you're listening to us on YouTube, give me some thoughts in the chat, man. This is the best part of what we do is we love to talk ball and just watch film, right? That's the core competency here. So opinions on Anthony Knapp or any of the other players we're watching, it's more than asked for, more than appreciated for sure.
How do you feel about this, Ryan? I'm very interested because you guys, we all watch film.
Yep.
When you're watching an offensive lineman and say he is from the state of Nebraska, and you're watching him and he looks dominant, but the competition might not be as good. And then you watch an offensive lineman from the state of Georgia where the level of defensive lineman that offensive lineman might be facing in that particular state. Does that come into the evaluation when you watch the level of dominance? So whereas one film might look more dominant against less competition, but then you get a kid from the state of Florida, Georgia, Texas going up against top-notch competition where, they might win some, they might lose some because they're going up against good players. But when you see them compete and show that they belong amongst that competition, it has to make you feel pretty good.
No, I think that especially, Sean, for me, because we talked a lot about similar thing to Jaden Greathouse and Rico Flores making the transition this offseason, right? It's when you see a guy competing against the best of the best all the time and succeeding, or at least competing his tail off, you're like, okay, that guy could be, he's in that conversation, right?
Yeah.
But then there's other guys that, to your point, it's maybe a small school in Nebraska, for instance. So this was the one that you kind of utilized, right? That guy's going to beat up on dudes, right? You're going to beat up on him. That's not fair.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I'm always just looking for traits as far as does he have the athleticism? And then obviously he does play in the state of Georgia. He plays against good competition. So he's getting battle tested, man. There's no doubt. So I think as long as Anthony Knapp is a player that is able to develop properly from a size perspective, I think he has a chance to be a very good guard at the next level or center. I think he has a chance to be that type of guy. I really do. So I know some people are low on him because the star rankings and blah blah blah, all that great stuff. Whatever, man. Like I don't care. I really don't. It's it's one of those things of like, like I'm going to use a viewer for just an example, and I hope this is okay. I'm not because I think that there's concerns with a guy like Anthony Knapp that you need to talk about, right? Like Charlie Weiss, Les Beltloof just talked a little bit about like he needs to hit the weight room, and I agree, Charlie. There's no doubt about that, man. There's no doubt. I like his foot quickness, though. I think he's nasty. But yeah, he needs to hit the weight room. There's no doubt, man. We need to talk about the strengths and the concerns and the places that they need to get better at. There's no doubt about it. Physical, really good athletes, and there's a physicality he plays with. So, I mean, Charlie, I get it, man. Charlie, I agree with you to a sentiment that he's beating up on small guys smaller than him, but like he's also playing at a pretty dang good level of football in Georgia. It's not like he's playing nobodies, man. I don't know. We'll just agree to disagree on that aspect of this, right? But
that's my thing, right? Like, what are we really trying to build? Yeah. And I don't think that might escape. Look, Notre Dame had. Let me just pose this, right? Because this is something that really hit me watching the pro day. I'm sitting there watching the pro day, and I'm saying to myself, this pro day kind of equals 9-4. That's what I said to myself. I said, this pro day kind of equals 9-4. And I talked about the defensive line, and I said, okay, you're recruiting at Notre Dame. If you can't replace a second rounder and 2 undrafted defensive linemen, then there's a bigger problem.
Yep.
I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm not worried about replacing Isaiah Foskey and the Ademiolas. Not based upon what I just saw athletically in his pro day. No, if we can't replace that, then it's a problem. Right. If we can't replace that, right? So now you go to the offensive line, and I'm looking at Jared Patterson and I'm looking at Josh Lugg, and I'm saying to myself, Christopher and Schroff should be just as good, if not better. They should definitely be more athletic than what I'm looking at along the offensive line. So when you look at a young man, and we kind of teased it, I think Notre Dame, there has to be a need for Notre Dame on the interior because everybody wants the guards and centers that are 315, 312. And I think a lot of teams, take Ohio State and Georgia, they're getting massive tackles. And then their inside guys are really athletic.
Right.
And it's great for the run game on multiple levels and diversity in the run game. And they still hold up in pass protection. And I think Notre Dame for the longest has been really stout on the inside at the offensive line, but not so athletic on the offensive line. And how long have I heard you and Brian talk about creating more diversity in the running game and finding a way to run outside more at Notre Dame? Well, the way you do that is you go get athletic people that play tackle in high school that you can kick in, and that athleticism as they gain weight stays there. Who cares about the rankings? You're looking at a kid as a coach up front. Joe Rudolph saw him in person and tabbed him. He's fighting for him to get him to Notre Dame. And if he chooses Notre Dame, you have to believe that the plan, like you said, Ryan, is to create and develop a very athletic guard that's going to continue the trend that Notre Dame wants to get to ultimately with their offensive line. So that's why I brought up the Nebraska-Georgia thing.
Yeah.
Like, we can sit here and show you film of dominant linemen from Indiana, Nebraska, and places where the competition isn't really that good. Like, look, Notre Dame passed on the number one offensive lineman in the state of Indiana for a long time.
Yep.
I never even took time to look. When I heard Brian and Ryan talk about his film, I said there's no need for me to watch his film then. There's no need for me to watch this film.
I don't want it to sound like my opinion's the gospel, man. Like I don't.
No. It's not the fact that it's the gospel.
Yeah.
But I have enough faith that if I have two consensus ideas from both of you guys, it's like, you know what? Okay. You know, but he's a 5-star though. He's a 5-star. You have to go get this kid.
He's a good player. He's a good player.
There you go. He's a good player.
Good solid football player, man.
He's a good solid football player. But he's a 5-star though.
Yes.
But the most you can say about him is that he's a good solid football player.
And Sean, I want to put like so the coordination of the 2024 offensive line class, just real briefly, is that we have talked about like in our opinion, in my opinion, especially, my opinion is that offensive tackles are paramount in this class. Absolutely paramount. You know, Caleb Johnson obviously is no part of the program. You're potentially losing Joe Alt, maybe Blake Fisher after the next after next season. So I think getting offensive tackle types is very important.
Yeah.
Anthony Knapp is a player that Notre Dame sees as a pure interior player. Okay. Pure interior player. They're still going after guys. So I was just reading the comments. They're still going after guys like Caleb Brewer and Gerby Lamberts that they believe are true offensive tackle types. Right or wrong, and if you disagree, that's fine. But Notre Dame does believe, I think, just based upon what I'm hearing, that Peter Jones might be able to play offensive tackle at the next level. It's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to play guard. Same thing with Sullivan Absher in the 2023 class. The plan is, let's see what he looks like at tackle first. So we can talk about, those evaluations being wrong, and that's fair. I mean, I'll listen to it, right? But Notre Dame's perspective is they're taking one interior offensive lineman as of now. That could be Anthony Knapp in this class. And then they are going to potentially get 3 offensive tackle types. That's kind of the urge, I believe, in my opinion. So that's kind of where we are with that. And we can talk about the Ian Moore thing. Ian Moore's ranked as a 5-star by someone, but it's just like, that's not a 5-star, man. It's not a 5-star. Notre Dame's going after some pretty dang talented offensive linemen still, though. Gerby Lambert, I think, has 5-star upside. There's no doubt at offensive tackle. I believe Caleb Brewer has incredible upside as an offensive tackle, if not dominant guard. So that's Brandon. I mean, we could say it's a guessing game, man, but that's recruiting and evaluation in general is a guessing game, man. Like their opinion is one guy's a tackle. Your opinion might not be, but like that's not a guessing game to them. They believe that he can play tackle. Like that's kind of where we are.
This is the thing, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about putting together an offensive line room.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Charles Jackson might be a tackle for the next 3 seasons. Next 4. Right? If he doesn't play this year, then you got 3 seasons of Charles Jackson at tackle. So what's the pressure of getting 2 tackles? It's like, look, they like this kid. They like Peter Jones. They're going after Gerby Lambert. Talk about Caleb Brewer.
Emil Wagner just gained 12 pounds.
20 pounds. He's in the mix. I don't think people are looking at the full makeup of there's no panic in the Notre Dame offensive line room. Ty Chan is a humongous human being that's played tackle, that's going to be a really good guard, in my opinion. And is going to be in the competition to get playing time this year. Notre Dame has a full offensive line room. There's no panic here. Like, oh my God, if we don't find the right tackles, who's going to play next year? It's almost like relax. Notre Dame's going after Gerby Lambert along with everybody else. His recruiting is going to go probably into the fall. Relax. There are some other tackles that they're going to go after. That's going to go into the fall. Relax. Rome wasn't built in a day. And this offensive line class is going to take time. And the fact that the new offensive line coach, which we knew, this is part of that hair. Because I guarantee you, if Harry Hiestand identified this kid and said, yo, I love him, the people would be slow to say anything about this
Yep.
young man. But the fact that it's Joe Rudolph and not Harry Heastand that's sticking up for a young man that he was on at Virginia Tech, and now he wants him to come to Notre Dame. It's like it's the same process that we gave Harry Heastand the same amount of rope.
Yep.
With certain decisions about certain guys in the recruiting class, especially early on, that he thought would be great picks. So let's just relax as a fan base and let the class develop and be happy with the fact that the offensive line room is in great shape right now. Great shape to the point that Notre Dame can be a little, I don't know if picky is the right word.
Notre Dame should be picky at offensive line.
Yeah.
They should always be picky. Yeah.
They can afford to be picky in the 24 class. Be picky. Take your time, identify the guys that you want, and stay in the fight for the guys that everybody wants, like a Gerby Lambert.
I just ask for consistency, man. I mean, like I always say, like scouting is an art, not a science, and it always is, right? There were a lot of people at Notre Dame that thought that Peter Skoronski was a guard at the college level, right, Sean? And then he develops into one of the best offensive tackles in college football over the last 3 years for Northwestern. Like people get it wrong, man, and people have different opinions. It doesn't mean that. Like I personally believe that Sullivan Absher would be a better guard than tackle, but Notre Dame doesn't see it that way potentially. I mean, so what we have a difference of opinion. We'll see how it works out. Like that's just kind of where we're at, right? I mean, I think that Caleb Brewer is going to be an offensive tackle on the college level. I absolutely do. There are some people in this chat that do not agree with that at all. They do not agree with that even slightly. So that's it, man. That's it.
Look, Caleb Brewer can do. I love that dude.
Yes. He's gonna be on campus next weekend too.
Sean. Get this young man. Sign him up.
I love that kid, man. I
think he can be nasty and really good. Really, I would venture to say if they just happen to move him inside, double R.
Yeah.
If he would be a really good tackle. Don't get me wrong. But you put him at guard with his size and athleticism.
Now Sean, honestly, I really think that Caleb Brewer could play all 5 positions if he wanted to at the college level. I really do, man. I think he really could. It's wild. I'm so high on that kid, man. We'll see if it ends up at Notre Dame or not, but I'm very high on Caleb Brewer, who is visiting campus this weekend. So it'll be interesting to keep close tabs on that one. Sean, we'll get back to some film here, man. This is a funky one for a second, Sean, because usually I'm pulling up huddle film, right? This young man doesn't have huddle film. You know what he has? Old fashioned, man. He's going to the YouTube. Go to YouTube, man. So we're going to watch a little bit of Owen Strebing. I can't speak right now. He is an offensive lineman out of Waukesha, Wisconsin. He goes to Catholic Memorial. If that sounds familiar, it's because Notre Dame was recruiting Corey Smith for a bit, the running back for the high school. Owen is a member of that offensive line. So first thing that's going to pop out here, man, 2025 kid, only a sophomore. Sean, he's 6'8", 290 pounds, man, already. What the heck are they feeding this kid, man? What are they feeding this kid? I can't believe it, man. I saw the size, and I was like, yeah, right. And then I watched this film. I'm like, oh, he might legitimately be 6'7", 6'8", 280, 290 pounds. He might be that as a sophomore in high school. Very strong lower half, man. Very strong core. This kid, I think, has a chance to be pretty dang special if he's developed properly.
And Notre Dame fans, it might be painful to watch this film and see Corey Smith, but
breaking off big runs.
Yes, let's try to focus on the young man. Like you said, his base, his quickness, he's powerful. He's a tackle, man. He's a very talented young man. I can definitely see him playing tackle.
Yes,
on the next level.
This is a pure tackle. I actually think he plays with pretty good hip sync. So, like,
he does. I
mean, maybe he could be a Josh Luggish type of guard as far as like the height, but like this is a tackle type. Like this is 100% a tackle. There's no doubt.
And that hip sync is so important. Yes. Not just the offensive line, but at other positions. I think I talked to you when I was driving home we were sharing a conversation, and I was talking about in the drills, just Max Bullock just hammering, hip sync
Yes.
to Drake Bowen, just hammering it home through each drill. So when you see someone at that size having good sinkage, that lets you know that they can play that position on the next level. It transitions pretty well.
Man, he's a big cat, man. I mean, that's my analysis on this young man, is that this kid is big. That's Corey Smith right there,
solid,
by the way.
Right?
Yeah.
He looks solid. Like,
yes.
He has like Joe Alt's body type was similar.
Yeah.
When you see Joe Alt, he's just slender. He looks slender, but he's much bigger than the frame might, lead you to believe, should I say.
Joe Alt looks slender, but he's also 315 pounds. Like,
exactly.
It's wild, man. Wild.
Exactly.
Sean, this does hurt me, man, to watch Corey Smith just run circles around dude, man. I
know. I said that. I knew it was going to be painful to have to watch offensive line play with Corey Smith running like crazy.
Look at that move. Oh, stop, Corey. Stop doing it, man. I really like that kid a lot. Unfortunately, he just wasn't as interested in Notre Dame as Notre Dame was interested in him, unfortunately.
That's okay.
But man. The kid's going to be good, though. Kid's going to be good, man. Oh. I really like that kid. I could watch him all day run the football. But Owen Strabig, excuse me, I keep mispronouncing his name. 2025 kid out of Wisconsin, though. As you see, 6'7", 280 listed. I've seen him listed at 6'8", 290. Definitely in that 6'7" range. Definitely big. Definitely strong. Pretty good athlete, man. He moves pretty well in space, too. He's not a lumbering kid either. So he's good, man. He's good.
So there you go. Brandon, you wanted a tackle? There you go.
That's your pure tackle, Brandon.
That's your pure tackle.
That's your pure tackle. Yes, he is definitely a pure tackle. I don't think anyone questions that one at all. But, another Wisconsin kid, man. I feel like Wisconsin keeps getting these offensive linemen over the last few years, too. I mean, we're talking about Billy Schrouth, right? I know Brunner, that's at Wisconsin, was a big-time dude. Hinsman, that's at Ohio State, right? Was that same recruiting class? Like, just wild how many talented offensive linemen are coming out of the state of Wisconsin over the last few cycles, man. It's really interesting. Next guy, Sean, we're going to talk a little bit about the most recent new offer to the Notre Dame board. Gus Ritchie, who is a defensive end, outside linebacker out of Northwood High School in Pittsboro, North Carolina. Sean, I had the chance to talk to this young man after he was offered. To say he was excited about the Notre Dame offer would be drastically underselling it. So I'll just leave it at that. Tight end, defensive end, linebacker. Notre Dame is looking at him as a Viper recruit potentially in the 2025 class. He has been talked to from several schools about potentially playing tight end. Some have talked to him about playing linebacker. Others have talked to him about being a pass rusher as a Viper type in their system. So I want to get this young man on film, man, because he is – versatility is the thing that's going to pop out with this young man right here, right? Is that he is asked to do so many things, Sean. He had dynamic season, really, really crazy stats from a receiving perspective, had over 700 yards, also was, double-digit sacks, a lot of tackles. This kid was a dynamic weapon for his team this past year. Here he is on the, getting a sack defensively. Here he is on the receiving end. Sean, you see at 6'3", 200, I think he was listed at 230 pounds, 225, depending on it.
Good gracious.
Yeah, man. Gives me some different type of player than what Preston Zinter was, but Preston Zinter was also a kid that I thought of could have played tight end on the Power 5 level, maybe not at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
But a player that I think has tremendous upside as a football player on the next level, right? I think is what Gus Ritchie has. I mean, you see him inside in line at tight end. You've seen him outside on the slot. You've seen him on the perimeter as a wide receiver. You've seen him on defense rushing the passer. Was told that his coach is going to use him a little bit more as more of a hybrid player as a junior. Yeah. So they're going to use him in pass coverage a little bit more on the second level. A really interesting player than Gus Ritchie. There he is catching a
like
pass.
Said, the versatility is just kudos to the coaching staff, using him in the various ways to be successful offensively and defensively, man.
As a sophomore too, Sean, to get that type of plan and to use them in so many different ways, like there's a lot of trust, obviously, too, man.
Absolutely.
Woo!
Did you see him just destroy that?
Yeah, he destroyed that tight end, man. Destroyed him. That's why you shouldn't block defensive ends with tight ends. One of the dumbest things that I see on the NFL level all the time. It's like, Myles Garrett one-on-one with a tight end. That's going to end really well. Let's keep doing that. He can play tight end, though, man. He's pretty good. I mean, honestly, like, I wouldn't even, like, if I was Notre Dame, like, if he was going to play tight end, man, I'd consider it. To be honest, like, I'd be like, all right. I mean, you can play, man. You can play. But, I mean, obviously only a sophomore. We'll see what happens here. But 6'3", 230. Looks like he has a pretty good frame. You know, has the potential to grow into it, I believe. He'll be 255 pounds before too long playing that defensive end position. But he's got some decent speed, too, Sean. Like, he can work in the open field a little bit. Lots to like about Gus Ritchie, man. Lots to like about him. We'll finish up with this little yard after catch guy running over tacklers.
Gus. We see you, Gus.
See you, Gus. Gus Bus, man. Gus Bus. Which brings us to our final player that was offered this past week, Sean. Another player that is a little more pertinent to Notre Dame fans from a 2024 recruiting class perspective. This one is a little more pertinent. Paul Menk Jr., who is a defensive back out of Schertz, Texas. He goes to Samuel Clemens High School, Sean. 6'2", 180 pounds. A player that is still getting, he's getting attention on the recruiting trail, but it's been a little quiet from an offer perspective. But he's starting to pull in some more and more Power 5 offers, seemingly by the day. He already has a visit set up to Notre Dame, Sean. He'll be here, I believe, in the next few weeks. I'm going to look at the visitor list. I wrote it down because I was the one that I think put it out first. But Paul Menk, man, I want us to work through this one a little bit because this one's interesting, Sean. I mean, we expected maybe the safety board would expand at some point, but I didn't know if it would happen this quickly. Texas kid that also plays wide receiver for his team, 6'2", 180. Pretty good straight line speed, I would say. Was able to run past the defensive back pretty well there. I actually like this kid's film a lot more than I thought I was going to, Sean, because I saw the offer list like some people look at. I saw the star ranking like some people, even though he's actually ranked as a top 200 recruit by at least one service. But I think the thing pops out, man, is this kid's a nice athlete. He can move, man.
Man, his speed to catch that guy on the other side of the field, that's pretty impressive.
And he needs to grow into his frame. He's 6'2", 180 right now, but you see that he's a pretty dang willing tackler as well. Like he doesn't have the power profile right now because he's skinny, but he'll throw his weight around a little bit, man. So I think there's athleticism here. I think that there's physicality profile here. I think he has some range on the back end. Very interesting player. I don't know what's going to happen as far as his, if Notre Dame's going to, I mean, look at that, dude. That's some nice range right there.
Pick. That's good. Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen with Notre Dame and Paul Menk. I don't know, but he's going to visit. We'll see how that goes, obviously. But interesting profile here, Sean. Very interesting.
See how quick he got down into the box? Post snap there. Like anticipation, trust in his eyes.
See that length as well when he got up. You can see how long his arms are, man. He's got some really interesting length profile. Yeah. Good athlete. He can run. He's productive too. Yeah. I'm a little curious on why this kid isn't getting more looks currently, but I think he's a kid that could blow up a little bit, to be honest. I think he could.
Did he go up over 3 guys there?
Yeah, not bad, right? I love that play, man. You see they were doing a fake screen and then trying to hit the wheel route on him.
Yeah.
He diagnosed it so quickly and they clearly shut it down. Here's him as a tackler coming down in the box. Here it is, kind of running and cleaning up the screen. I think he lays a pretty nice little shot here. Able to bring him down. Interesting, man. Interesting football player. Very interested in Paul Menk. little bit of a release here on the outside vertical as a wide receiver. Finishes up over the top. I think he can elevate pretty easily for a guy as well. So, again, man, don't know what Notre Dame's going to do with this young man, but I'm very interested in him. Very interested in him. I'm interested to see when he gets on campus, too, when Notre Dame's able to, get those measurements, verify some things. Like, that's going to be really interesting to me. So that's Paul Menk. Again, he's a safety out of the state of Texas, Samuel Clemens High School. And, so that's going to conclude this portion of the podcast, Sean. That was some of the offers from this past week. Don't go anywhere because we got a lot of questions we want to try to hit in the mailbag here. Before we transition to mailbag, if you can please just hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast. 5-star reviews are always very much appreciated. Make sure, though, you hit that little notification bell. We'll be having a lot more shows this week. I'll be back with Brian Driscoll tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern time to really start getting more into the spring and kind of expectations moving into next season. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. 5-star reviews. Really do appreciate it so much. But that'll conclude this offer recap portion of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Mm-hmm. Sean, my favorite thing about this community is that they're so giving and just so supportive. Shout out to a couple of these super chats real quick, man. Kay Grant just dropped in a big super chat for us. Kay Grant, got the Shamrocks in there, man. Really appreciate you as always, my friends. Thank you so much. We had another super chat here as well. Need to find it real quick. It was a little higher. Here we go. From Byron Davis, Sean, who just wanted to give a little bit of feedback here. Thank you for the super chat, Byron. Says, love the Sean and Ryan pairing. Thanks for all the work you both put in the last weekend to bring us these Monday nuggets. Man. Could not just put it just on us, though, Byron. I always have to give a shout-out to Mr. Brian Driscoll, who obviously got a lot of intel. Me and Sean did the best we could to continue to get as much information as possible. So as a staff, just genuinely appreciate it, man. Thank you for the super chat, but more than anything, thank you for the compliment. We certainly have been doing our best, man. There's no doubt about that. And if any Notre Dame fan in the chats, Sean, I just finalized this a couple days ago, by the way. I don't know if you're heading out, but I'll be out for the spring game again this year, man. So I don't know if you'll be in. I don't know if you'll be on South Bend, but man.
Yeah, man. I'll be there. I'll be there definitely.
Awesome. Yeah. So I put a post on the board the other day about just kind of getting a little bit of a roll call for people that are coming, and yeah, man. So if you all are heading out to the spring game on the 22nd, I'll probably be getting in on the 21st and probably staying until that Sunday. So hit me up. Come to the tailgate if we have one. If not, just see me around, man. Would love to. We had a question here from Brent Smith. Sean said, Justin Scott has 2 officials to Georgia and Ohio State. We talked about it a little bit, as well as an unofficial to Miami. Is Scott the type of person who could be swayed by Georgia's affinity of pay for play?
You waiting for me to answer that one?
I mean, you're the Justin Scott knower, man. Yeah, I was like, you get it first crack. Because I have this propensity to talk too much sometimes, man. So
I think we went over this.
Yeah,
people are gonna believe what they want to believe, man. Ultimately, things come out in the wash. When he makes his decision, you'll see the type of person he is.
Time will tell, right? Time will tell. Yep. We think that won't be a major factor. He's talked about it a little bit in the past, but we don't think that'll be like the end all be all, Brett. Like I really don't see him leaving the Midwest. I just really don't, but we'll see ultimately. We'll see. Georgia's going to definitely do their best effort to make it happen. Miami's going to do the best effort to make it happen, but USC even was a team that he had visited at one point, right? So we'll see what happens, man.
Dude, honestly, if you talk to him off the record, USC was probably his most enjoyable visit.
Yeah, I believe it.
He had a ball at USC. He had a ball. He was there for the USC Notre Dame game.
That's dope.
So he had a ball. He had a ball for that game.
I mean, I'm thinking 16, 17-year-old kid out in LA, man. It sounds cool, right?
He's really into architecture.
Oh, nice.
So that's one of the things he talked about was the architecture of the buildings on their campus and how he really liked it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, I'm not Obviously, I hate USC, right? But I would like to just see the campus and everything, right? Like, I think that's pretty dope. I want to see some of those historical programs, some of their campuses and whatnot. So I would like to just see it. Doesn't mean I have to like it, right? But we'll see. All right, we're going to go to this next one, Sean. Jimmy James said, haven't heard anything about or from CJ Carr. Any news? Jimmy, I know someone asked us in the chat as well. Look, CJ will be on campus sometime this spring. He will, right? But he's doing the 7-on-7 thing. So, like, he was down in Florida this past weekend. He was out in the state of Washington at one point. He's just been around, man. So we think that CJ is very solid in his commitments to Notre Dame. That's just kind of where we are. It's just he's on the 7-on-7 circuit. Cam Williams wasn't on campus this weekend as well. He was at a track meet and he was just, kind of, doing his own thing. So don't freak out anytime a kid doesn't get to campus or whatnot. I'm not saying you directly, Jimmy, but it doesn't always mean anything, right? Like the kid's on the 7-on-7. But honestly, and CJ's also recruiting while he's playing 7-on-7, right? We talk about a lot of the receivers that he's literally played 7-on-7 with Jaden Riddell. And that stuff matters, right? Yeah. That stuff matters. We had a question from Keith Wiggins, Sean, who said, Ryan, if Notre Dame gets Justin Scott, is Notre Dame done at defensive tackle, Scott and Owen Wafel?
I would hope not.
I think what you're going to see, Keith, in my opinion, is are they done with pure offensive tackle? Pure defensive tackles in the class? Maybe. But they're going to recruit, I think, a couple players that are strong side ends that could potentially be defensive tackles as well, right? So that's kind of what I look for. That's what I'm kind of looking at with this class right now. It's like, maybe Notre Dame pushes for a strong side defensive end that might end up inside ultimately, but pure defensive tackles, I think that Scott and Wafel would be those two guys. So to your question.
Yeah.
All right, let us move on to another one. We're going to go to this one, Sean, from Brent Smith. He said, Sean and Ryan, did you watch Swarbrick and Father Jenkins on NBC last Thursday? Also an article bringing up NIL, among other things, like Congress is an oversight committee. Sean, did you see this interview? I still haven't seen it.
I've yet to see the interview. I did read the New York Times article, though.
Opinions on the article? I haven't read it either. Any opinions?
Look, there's just it wasn't a good look, in my opinion. The things that they said, it seemed like with everything that's taking place in NIL, instead of being proactive and putting Notre Dame or positioning Notre Dame in an advantageous place that will benefit the university and all of sports on the Notre Dame campus, they choose to sit back and beg someone else to do their job for them.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm sorry, that's just not a good look. I saw some people congratulating them for, saying that, they suggested that the one and done rule should be gotten rid of. Like, oh my God. Really? You suggested something that people have been suggesting to the NCAA for like 10 years? Like, you want a pat on the back for that? It just wasn't a good look. In my opinion, it just wasn't a good look. The new Notre Dame is too powerful and in too great of a position to be asking Congress to oversee things. You choose how you want to move in the NIL landscape. You don't have to beg someone to shape the landscape to help you.
Yeah. I think it's well said. It's well said. I look forward. I need to go back and read the article, and I definitely will watch the interview with Swarbrick and Father Jenkins at some point. It's been a little busy, man. It's been a little busy, just a little busy. So we're working through it, though. Sean, this is a really interesting question. I want to get your perspective on it because I don't know if I I have an opinion on it, but I'm not sure if I have like an in-depth opinion on it, if that makes sense. Nathan Milton asks, does Notre Dame have a shot with Justin Scott if Brian Kelly is still there? I feel like you don't think so. Like that. All right. So this is my thought process, though. This is my thought process. I would say that they would have a shot, but I don't necessarily think that they would close on him because I think that Justin Scott has a high affinity for Notre Dame, Like, that's kind of my thought process, though.
Yep. He has a high affinity for Notre Dame. He also has a high affinity for his mom.
Right.
His mom and Brian Kelly wouldn't mix well. I can tell you that now.
Fair enough. You know mom a little bit better than I do, so I'll take that. I'll take that.
I mean, I'm telling you, that was the main issue with Cardell Tate.
Yeah.
So I mean, Brian Kelly is just he's a tad bit smug. You know, when you're working class individuals, that doesn't come across.
Doesn't play.
No. No.
Again, you know Justin's mom a little bit better than I do, right? So I'll take your opinion on that one. I just assume that the affinity would at least be attractive to him.
Well, they would still be in his top schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, no.
Well, I mean, if you're in the top schools, you have a shot, though, right?
I guess technically you do.
Yes. I think that one thing that we agree 100% on this one, though, Sean, is I don't think that he would come to Notre Dame with Brian Kelly. I think if Notre Dame's having, I don't want to say trouble, but like if this process is playing out the way it is with Marcus Freeman as the head coach, I don't have any confidence that Brian Kelly would be able to snag him up. I don't.
Yeah. Now, if Marcus Freeman was still the DC.
Yeah. Maybe a chance then. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
If he's
he would be.
You know what? With him as the DC.
Maybe have a shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, here, let's ask it like this, Sean. If a coaching change never happened and you keep the defensive line coach and the defense coordinator intact, so if Mike Elston was still here too, shot? Maybe?
I just think Brian Kelly, man. I'm sorry, dude. He was such a deficit in recruiting, man. I don't think people understand. I don't think people really understand the work that the assistant coaches had to do so much just to stay in with the big time kids because they weren't getting anything.
Any traction
from the head coach. They weren't getting anything. Help.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that goes back to what I saw. Your head coach at Notre Dame, from a recruiting standpoint, is a star. Like, the kids are very aware of Marcus Freeman, but the parents are just as excited to take pictures, and meet Marcus Freeman. It's just totally different, man. And that's not just coming from me. That's coming from people and sources that are in college football, been around college football for years, that know the stories of recruits showing up to campus and the head coach is nowhere to be found over the years.
Yeah. Sean, my favorite quote ever was from Tom Lemming when he came on the recruiting show for the signing day show. And he said, word for word, he was like, Brian Kelly's great in the room. The problem is that you can never get him into the room.
That's the type of stuff. It's like, as we said before, with Justice Scott.
Yeah.
He got to campus. Marcus Freeman was on him. He was on him, I also told him Notre Dame fans were on him about his Crocs. he said, leave me alone, man. But no.
I was one of them that was talking about
You were. You absolutely were. I forgot we had that conversation. We did have that conversation, Double R. I forgot that.
Yeah, man. I was texting about that. I'm like, I don't know if I can trust him. He's got Crocs on.
he got a kick out of it, though. When I tell you he had a big hearty laugh about it, he did.
That's hysterical, man. I was completely kidding, obviously, but I'm like, man, every kid I ever taught that wore Crocs was a little bit of a hard guy to handle, Oh, it's too funny though. That's really funny.
Man. 300-pounders, man. They're gonna protect those puppies, man.
I feel that, man. I feel that. Whatever you need to do for that, too. Whatever you need to do for that. Sean, Adam Blair posted question of who's y'all fellas like better, Jaden Riddell or Carter Nelson?
No, that's not fair. Don't do that to us.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I get Adam, because like it's not a better thing, it's a different thing, right? So
Yeah.
if you ask me like what are the positives to each guy, like I can do that all day, right? It's like Sean Riddell for me is a guy that you can put over the formation, right? Like I put him at boundary, I could put him in the slot, I could put him as a wing. Attach, not as much right now, just because he needs to keep filling out. And literally, he doesn't play attached at all on the high school level, right? Carter Nelson is a guy that he's such a weird profile, man. Plays quarterback, wide receiver, safety, linebacker on defense. I think the great selling points to Carter Nelson, though, this kid's a freaky athlete. It's like Jaden Riddell is, but Nelson's a freaky athlete. And I think that Nelson's a little bit longer than Riddell, a little bit longer. So you look at his frame, and I'm like, at 6'5", 215 pounds that Carter Nelson is now, he could be 250 easy, in my opinion. Like, he's got a long frame. Jaden Riddell is probably going to be 6'4", 245. It's probably what he's going to be. So I think Nelson could get a little bit bigger than Riddell. But I think that what Riddell brings that Carter doesn't have right now is that Riddell is very, very nuanced as a receiver of the football, right? Because he does it so much more, plays great down the field, really good body control, can run. Both guys bring a lot to the table, man. They bring a lot to the table. Notre Dame would be happy to have either of them or both. I mean, I would love to have both, but, at the end of the day.
Some of the people in the chat point out something, the chemistry being built with CJ and Riddell. Yeah. And what you said, like Riddell is probably a more refined pass receiver at this point, just watching film. But Carter Nelson is just such a unicorn, man. It's like his ceiling is probably
a freaky athlete, man.
Yeah, his ceiling is probably. I think I don't even know if you can really say what his ceiling can be at this point.
You have no idea.
You have no idea. And it's scary to bypass that. You know what I'm saying? As a recruiter.
Yes.
It's scary to bypass that. And I guess I would say, sure thing, just right now, it's probably safer to say Riddell. Safer. Not better.
He's definitely the more high floor player. There's no doubt. And that's not underselling Riddell as an athlete, because and he reports a 4.4 something in the 40, right? Like, my guy is a really good athlete. There's really no doubt.
Yeah.
I would say for me, though, I do think Carter Nelson's a more better all around athlete, if that makes sense. Like, I think he's springier, right? I think he's a little bit more, he can jump a little bit higher, can elevate a little bit. Like, but Riddell is straight line, maybe a slightly faster than Carter Nelson. And he's a more nuanced. Like he's a more developed player too.
Yeah.
Like, he's just more developed than what Carter is.
Yeah, and he's played against better competition.
Oh, no doubt.
No doubt. To point that out. So I mean, just it's tough. And we're not saying that to say Riddell. We're saying that to say it's this or that. It's like it's tough. It's like if you choose one, you're giving up the other, and there are pros on both sides that just make you say, man. Can I have both?
Right.
Honestly.
Dude, man, Nelson is just one of those guys, Sean. The fact that he plays against such low level of competition, though, like it's hurt his development a little bit, man, because like I can't imagine how good that dude would be. Like if he
what do you think? How would they comp? Let's talk about this because
can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Brandon just said something about Riddell. Like, Riddell's a really good athlete. I'm not saying that he's not springy. What I'm saying is that Carter Nelson's a 7-foot high jumper as a sophomore in high school, man. That's all I'm saying, man.
He's a unicorn.
And go watch his basketball highlights, man. Like, that kid can sky, man. He can sky. That was my whole point. But go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry.
Like, we've seen Georgia use different types of tight ends on the field at the same time. So let's just say Carter Nelson and Riddell are both at Notre Dame. How do you use them simultaneously on the field?
I put one wide receiver and one as a detached tight end, man, like in the slot or as a wing. Like the crazy part about Riddell is that I think Riddell could legitimately play an X receiver or boundary receiver at Notre Dame. Like he could 100% do that, in my opinion, man. Like he could be a big wide receiver if he wanted to. Like he's that type of athlete. Carter, I don't think Carter's like Carter could play outside the numbers a little bit, but like Carter's more of a middle of the field type of target, right? Because he's got that long frame and he kind of worked through contact, that type of thing. Yeah. So I mean, the troubling part about those two guys, though, in my opinion, is that I don't know which one of them is going to be an inline guy at the next level exclusively. Gotcha. Riddell's thicker right now, but I think Carter could be way more when all is said and done when they're developed properly. So are you putting either one of those guys in line? I don't know, right? Yeah. Like that's the only troubling part about it.
So you would trust Jack Larson to be in line more than either one of those guys?
Not necessarily. I think you're getting a lot of I think what Notre Dame is looking at and what kind of my view on this is.
Yeah.
You went from so you got Cooper Flanagan in 2023, who's a pure inline guy, right?
Yeah, right.
You're going to get potentially two guys that are more of like hybrid move tight ends in 2024. Yeah. And then the 2025 board, you see a lot more of those attached players, the Ryan Gees of the world, the James Flanagans, bigger style tight ends. So I think you're looking for movement-based tight ends in 2024 is what I think.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. That's just kind of my thought process on it. But great question, though. It's a great question. It's like there's no wrong answer to that either, right? It's if you like Riddell slightly more, you like Nelson slightly more. There's merits to both sides, obviously. So, Chris, ND for Life, Fortson said, Mailbag, were any of the 2024 commits on campus to talk to Justin Scott like CJ or Cam? CJ was not. He was playing doing 7-on-7 stuff down in Florida. Cam Williams had a track meet. He was not there as well. Sean, the only 2024 commit that was there, I believe, was Aeneas Williams. On the campus. Yep. They had two 2023 kids, though. Charles Jagasol was there and Micah Bell was there. But 2024 commits, just Aeneas Williams.
And good to see CJ back. Just good to see him back up, walking around, feeling good. Can't wait for him to come in the fall and get to going.
Yeah, man. I hope he I hope I'm happy, because he had that meniscus, obviously, right? So, like, hopefully he's doing well with that. I agree. 100% agree.
Yeah, he is. Let me count. He should. Yeah. It was 4 weeks to back to 4 weeks of rehab.
Yeah,
and then back to getting back to running after that. So he should be on the verge of getting back to running.
I felt so bad for him, Sean, because obviously he's such a good wrestler. Is why he was not an early enrollee, right? Like he wanted to finish that out. Yeah. And then he gets the meniscus. He has to miss that, and he missed the he was planning on potentially early enrolling after that happened.
Right.
And then he missed it by like 2 days.
Missed it by 2 days.
It was wild, man. Such an unfortunate circumstance. We had this question that we really don't know the answer to, Sean. Brent Smith just said, is Jared Parker and our new quarterbacks coach, that being Gino Gaduli, going to be upstairs in the booth? From my experience, usually I would expect that with Gino being a quarterbacks coach and obviously a quarterback background and seeing the passing game, I would expect him to be up top. Jared Parker, I'm not sure where he's going to be. He could be up top. He could be down low. I'm not 100% sure about that. Like, I'm not. So I imagine Joe Rudolph is probably an on-the-field type of coach, I would assume. So, like, I think that there's a little bit of flexibility for what Jared Parker wants to do as far as where he calls the game from. But I think one thing for certain, Sean, I would be kind of surprised if Gino was not up in the box, personally. I just would be surprised.
Gino strikes me as someone that, if you watch him coach, he has to be with his guys if you watch him coach. So I would venture to say that Jared Parker will probably be in the booth and Gino will be down on the field.
Interesting. We'll see.
But that's pretty much decided by the preference of the OC, though.
Yeah, what he's comfortable with.
Yeah,
all that great stuff.
Some OCs like to be on the field. Others like to be upstairs. Tommy prefers to be upstairs.
Yep.
So.
We had an interesting perspective here from John coming up here, Sean. He said, I loved the duo of Christian Gray and Micah Bell at cornerback, both top 75 players. However, call me crazy, but I think Leonard Moore and Carson Hobbs are a better duo. Any chance you cats agree? Nah. I don't agree. Sorry, John. I don't really agree on that one. I think that I love Leonard Moore. I would put Leonard Moore, a step below Christian Gray right now, but like at the same time in development. But I think Leonard Moore could be in the ballpark of Christian Gray when it's all said and done. I really do. Carson Hobbs is a talented kid, but he's not there yet, right? Like he's got some development that needs to happen. So I can't quite get there yet, but we'll see what happens. Obviously, there's a senior year that has to be played for both guys. So we shall see. We shall see. And there's also the possibility, Sean, that 2024, maybe you get a guy like a John Mitchell that now it's a trio instead of a duo, which will be interesting. We had from Irvin Castaneda, excuse me. Hi, Ryan. Good to hear all these recruiting updates, but it seems like the legacy Mosley kid from California has gone quiet. Are we going to run out of space and he gets left out? I just don't think that there's a ton of interest from him, man, which is kind of weird, right? Like, I think that he had subtle interest, but and again, like Emmett Mosley, whose dad played for Notre Dame, his mom was an all-time great soccer player for Notre Dame. Just don't think he likes Notre Dame that much. Like I think let me rephrase. I don't think that he likes Notre Dame as much as a couple other schools. Like that's kind of where we are, right? So no, I don't think Emmett Mosley ends up with Notre Dame. I'm sure they'll keep recruiting him, but like I just don't see that matching up right now, which is interesting. Sean, we had two different. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, as much as we love legacy kids, he has a father that knows football.
Yes.
And knows what's going to be beneficial for his son for the position he plays and what programs will probably fit better. 100%. So, without Notre Dame really, Notre Dame this year might be able to put film down for kids that are wide receivers and quarterbacks to say, this is a school that's coming out 3 wides, consistently pushing the ball down the field, getting explosive plays. Look at our wide receivers and what you can do.
Yeah,
that happens this year. But what film would you want a kid like Emmett Mosley and his dad who knows the game? What film would they watch to have an assurance of development?
Yeah.
So
it's true. It's true. And ultimately, man, I want to phrase this the right way. I'm okay with Emmett Mosley III, so the son, to want to pave his own legacy. I'm okay with that, right? Like if going to Notre Dame is kind of the easy thing to do for him, right? And I think he wants to do something a little different potentially. That's kind of my vibe for it. So we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. Sean, we had 2 questions that are very similar, so I'm going to pull them up together. John also had a question that said, is Jack Larson on board with Notre Dame possibly taking 3 tight ends? And we had Nathan Milton that asked the question generally to John's question of, would Notre Dame take 3 tight ends in 2024 class? I don't think so right now is the answer that I'll give you. I don't think it is right now. I think Notre Dame will take 2 tight ends, but I'll put it this way, man, and it's just my personal opinion. This is not a Notre Dame opinion. I don't know what they think about this, but if you get Jaden Riddell, let's say, the commits, and Carter Nelson wants to also come to play at Notre Dame, I would have a very difficult time saying no. I'm not saying they would. I'm not saying they wouldn't. I'm not sure they'll be able to take 3 tight ends right now.
Man. Whew. Brian, that's
just my vibe, man. Just my vibe.
That's tough, right?
Back to John's question, though. Back to John's real quick, Sean. Okay. To my answer to this is that I don't think Jack has to worry about there being 3 tight ends on the board potentially. Like I just don't know if that'll happen. So
now going back, sticking with that question.
Yep.
Jack Larson's committed to Notre Dame. I don't
100%.
So Jack Larson is about to run for Jack Larson, while you're tripping, Jack Larson's a pretty darn talented pass receiver. If you go watch the clutch plays he made this past season.
Very good player.
Yeah.
You know what? Sean, the worst thing I see on the board nowadays is like, if both guys want to come, you got to tell Jack to leave. And I'm just like, guys, no, that's not what this is, man. That's not what this is. If you like both the guys so much, then take 3. Figure it out, right? Like, figure it out. But I would personally try to make it work. I'm not saying Notre Dame will or won't. I have no idea. That is a rich man's problem to have, though, Sean. If all 3 of those cats want to come play at Notre Dame, right? Like, that's a rich man's problem. So
something similar we've seen in the 24 class at the safety position at Georgia.
Yes.
Like, Georgia's already got 2 of the top safeties. Let's add DeMello.
Right. Seriously. Yeah, like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Like, if a kid like that says he wants to come, what are you going to tell him?
And I would also say, too, Sean, we have to talk about the roster right now, right? It's like, look, at the end of the day, I think, again, I want to be right with my words here. Kevin Bauman can't stay healthy, though. That's where we are, right? Eli Raritan has had 2 major knee injuries. That's a fact. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So when you look at the depth chart at Notre Dame, there are some uncertainties. So if those uncertainties aren't answered, like, I hope Eli stays healthy because I think he could be a star. I really do. But if he can't, then, like, you got to start thinking about numbers, man. You got to start thinking about replenishing the depth chart because Notre Dame this spring is thin at tight end right now, Sean. I mean, you have Mitchell Evans, you have Holden Stace.
Yeah.
That's
it.
That's it. I mean, you got Davis Sherwood, who's a very good former walk-on, right? But at the end of the day, he's not a starting caliber tight end at the University of Notre Dame. Like, that's just not what he is, right?
Yeah.
So if Eli can't stay healthy or something else happens, another setback happens, and Kevin Bauman just isn't able to stay healthy either, like, got to figure it out, man. You got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Just my opinion, though. Again, I don't know what Notre Dame's going to do. That's a great problem to have, though. Great problem to have. And someone just asked, I think it was Time Out Tom, so I just want to bang this out real quick. Sean, I said, assuming Notre Dame isn't taking three tight ends, who's the top take, Riddell or Carter Nelson? I think it really depends on who wants to come first, man. I think that might be a conversation we have. I think logistically that Jaden Riddell will probably commit before Carter.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he'll, because Carter, they put everything on hold during basketball season, Sean.
Yeah.
They're going to start taking some visits now, but they're still taking visits to places they haven't seen yet because you got to remember, he was a little bit of a late riser, man, in the recruiting process. He was a late riser. So he's going to take some more unofficials, then he's going to take officials. If a spot's open for Carter Nelson, though, I do expect Notre Dame to potentially be one of those official visits. I do. I 100% do. But it's about the timeline of things, I think. Sean, we had this question. You would probably know a little better than myself, but I believe this is correct. John said, isn't Simeon High School home to Jabari Parker, Derrick Rose, and Jalil Okafor?
Jalil Okafor, no. Jalil Okafor went to Whitney Young High School, which is the home of Quentin Richardson and Missouri head coach Dennis Gates. They all won state championships or city championships at Whitney Young. Simeon is, of course, the legendary Ben Wilson, who passed away tragically. Jabari Parker, Derrick Rose, Kendrick Nunn, who's in the NBA, Deion Thomas. The list of NBA players, professional players at Simeon is just
silly.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
That's like it's like an Oak Hill type of vibe to it, right? Like one of those schools.
Yeah. They literally, if we're being honest, they literally might be the best, one of the best all-around athletic departments in the state. Like the girls' basketball, I think just one city. Boys' basketball is always great. Their football team has been fantastic for since I've been in high school. The baseball team, I think they've had something crazy like 40 kids drafted into the major leagues in the last 20 years. So that's all they do is produce talent.
Yeah,
that's all they do.
No doubt. I think most people know about Simeon from a basketball perspective, which is cool to see a couple really talented guys come out for football the last couple of years with Malik Elzy and now Christopher Burgess in 2025. So it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
From Tom Jibzinski, Sorry, Tom, if I pronounced your last name wrong. If you want to give me a pronunciation in the chat, I will do my best to remember and not butcher your name again. Said, out of curiosity, why was there not a lot of pressure on tight end recruit Deuce Robinson, considering where we are at with Mayer heading to the NFL? Need that big splash. I think, Tom, there's a couple layers, right? I think there was some intrigue on Deuce Robinson's side, but at that point, Notre Dame already had Cooper Flanagan committed in the class, and they just kind of went cold on recruiting Deuce. I mean, that's just kind of where it was, man.
Did he commit yet?
I don't know, man. He's still like wrestling with baseball and football, right? Like, I don't know.
Man.
Kid's a stud, though, man. Kid's a stud.
Without a doubt.
He's a really good baseball player, too. He's a really good baseball player. Oh, man. That's funny. All right. 2025. Oh, Nathan Milton wants to know about any 2025 quarterback updates. Nathan, we've heard that. So what I can disclose right now is that I think Notre Dame is kind of fixing a board here, like figuring out who their top targets are on the board. I think a couple names that are, and again, it's a really talented quarterback class in 2025. So I think Notre Dame's going to recruit a bunch of them, and it's still yet to be set, right? But I would expect Bryce Underwood to be a guy that Notre Dame looks at extensively, and for good reason. I would expect George McIntyre, who is Mike McIntyre's son, to be a guy that Notre Dame looks at extensively at the quarterback position. Yeah. I expect Deuce Knight to be a guy that Notre Dame looks at extensively at the quarterback position. But I think they're going to continue to do their homework at everyone. Like Cutter Boley was just on campus this past weekend, right? So Notre Dame's still doing their digging on quarterbacks. But I think those three guys especially are guys that Notre Dame is going to be pretty high on. And some of that's speculation, some of it's not. Do with that what you will.
The class is
dope, man.
Extremely talented.
Yes. Bryce Underwood's a stud, man. That kid's really good. But, I mean, we can't take away, man. Deuce Knight is very talented. George McIntyre is very talented. Cutter Boley's talented. KJ Lacey, Sean, is a stud down in Alabama. I just don't know if you are going to be able to get traction with an Alabama kid, a quarterback, right? Like, I just don't know if that's going to happen. But, you know. Just wanted to bang this one out real quick. We're almost done here. Brandon Plesner just asked, did I ever get a height, weight verification from Logan Thomas from the weekend? Not yet, Brandon. Stay tuned to the message board. If I get that update, I will make sure to pass that along, though. Another question here from Brent Smith, who said, Chancey Stuckey appears to be a great coach. What are your thoughts about other teams coming after him aggressively during the offseason? He's the real deal.
I mean, Marcus Freeman pretty much said every coach on his staff had offers and opportunity. You know, so it's a pretty good offensive staff.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just speaks volumes to how good of a coach Chancey Stuckey is, Sean, that 2 years as a position coach in college, NFL teams are already coming at him, man. Like, I think that says a lot about him. I think it says a lot. So hold on to him as long as you possibly can is all I'll have to say about that. All right, only a couple left here. We had Tyler Hanley who just said, where do things stand with TJ Lindsey and how many guys do they plan on taking on the defensive line this year? Tyler, I think the number is going to end up being 5 when you include the edge and interior defensive line. I think 5 is probably the number. As for TJ Lindsey, as I had a subtle voice crack there, I hope you didn't hear that one too much in the chat. TJ Lindsey, Sean, who's obviously the defensive lineman out of the University of Arkansas, out of the state of Arkansas, 6'4", 280-pound defensive tackle, who can also play strong side defensive end. I think the issue with TJ, and I think Notre Dame likes TJ a lot, but I think TJ really wants to let this process play out, man. Last time I talked to TJ, he was talking about committing on signing day, Sean. And I think the problem is that Notre Dame's probably going to be full at that point, man. Like, there's probably a decision that needs to be made a little bit earlier than that. Yeah. And I just don't know if that's in TJ's timeline. Like, I just don't know if it'll match up. So, but Notre Dame's recruiting him, going to continue to recruit him. And if TJ wants to come earlier, I'm sure Notre Dame would take him. Sure about it. So, we had Brent Smith who said, I'm concerned about Drake Bowen playing baseball. As talented as he is, he's going to put so much time and energy into baseball. I'm worried it's going to affect him as linebacker. Any thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on that, Sean?
No. So many people around the country do it, man. No. too many players in college football every year that either go from football to basketball to football or baseball to football. No, it's not. I don't know. Maybe we're looking at football like it's physics or something.
Yeah.
As long as Marcus Freeman is the head coach, the playbook is not going to change over the next 4 years, and playing the position is about read and react. And as long as he can read, I don't think he'll have a problem reacting and playing.
Yeah.
I
As long as there's a concise plan on being able to juggle them both, I think Drake will be fine. I think he'll be fine. But I also think, Sean, and like this is just kind of talking to Drake a little bit and just a little bit of speculation. I do think Notre Dame, I think football is the number one for Drake Bowen, right? Like I think he loves baseball too, but I think if push came to shove and it was too much, I think football would be the choice there. So
yeah, football will win out. And honestly, no, I don't think it won't affect them. I'd be interested in why Brent thinks that way.
Yeah.
I would worry more about him if I were a baseball fan. Whether
100%.
He's going to actually crack the lineup. That would be my biggest worry.
Agree. Nathan Milton had a question, Sean, real quick one. He said, any update on Elijah Rushing? He is having his official visit in June. And I mean, it's going to stay kind of just, building relationships and then see what the official visit brings. So there's not going to be a heavy update on Elijah until he gets to campus again. So we had Nathan Milton also said, Sean, how are things going with for Kingston, Viliamo Asa, who of course is the linebacker out of St. John Bosco? Look, so he was supposed to visit this past week on Friday. Fortunately, wasn't able to make a trip. I still think Notre Dame's in a really good spot for him. It's about getting him back on campus, obviously. And I think Kingston, some core competency that Kingston has as a person. Big believer in faith, big believer in academics and developments. If Notre Dame can hit all those areas, I think that they have a very good shot at Kingston. Ohio State, Notre Dame, Washington, and Miami were the 4 teams that he talked about that he feels like are separating themselves for him right now. So that's where we are. 4 left, Sean. From Stephen Goodson, just said Natarian Tuggle from my high school, just south of Notre Dame. Thoughts for Notre Dame? I mean, so he was on campus. I just think Notre Dame is pretty good with where their wide receiver board is right now, man. Like Tuggle's a good football player, though. Nitro Tuggle, he's a good player. I just don't know if it's necessary to give him an offer right now because I think you feel pretty good about where your wide receiver group is, and I don't expect it to be the biggest class of wide receivers of all time. So I just think that's kind of the holdup with Nitro. All right, and then we had here, Sean, who's Bailey West said, who y'all most excited to see get to campus this summer? Any player that you're excited to see hit this summer?
Gerby Lambert.
Yes, big one. Gerby's a big one.
I would say Gerby Lambert. Honestly.
Yep. Gerby's a big one, man. That's one guy that we don't talk about enough, but he is a priority for Notre Dame in this cycle. Like, you need to get a guy like Gerby Lambert. So getting him, I agree. Yeah. And then I think getting a couple of these kids that we keep talking about for officials, Sean, like
Jalen McClain and
yes, Jaden Riddell, get Jaden Riddell back for an official.
Yeah.
Man. Yep.
Yeah.
No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. Question here from Timeout Tom asks, at 6'5" plus as a sophomore, I see James Flanagan outgrowing tight end. Where do you project him in the future? He's a tight end, Tom. I mean, he's 226 pounds. I don't think he has a frame that he's going to be an offensive tackle. I mean, he's going to be a tight end. He's going to be a 6'5.5", 255-pound tight end at some point. Like, that's what he's going to be. Like I don't think he outgrows the tight end position. I don't
think so either.
We had this question from Brandon Plesner, who just said, Ryan, thoughts on Brian Huff? He projects to Will or Mike or both. Brandon, I think you could get him. I think he's passable at Will. I think he's more of a Mike, though. I mean, he's got a larger frame. I wouldn't say he's the most like cat quick, change of direction type cat, but getting downhill, I think is kind of where his game best lends itself. And that for me is a Mike linebacker. So I think he's going to be, I think he's listed like 6'3", 210 right now. Imagine he'll be 6'3", 235 playing Mike. He's probably actually like 6'2", 6'2.5". But yeah, I think he's a Mike linebacker. Last one, Sean. Just want to bang this one out real quick from Lilo Galante. It just says, what's the status of Dupree, running back for Mount Carmel? #Illinois. So, Lilo, we talked about this. I talked a little bit about this in the message board. But I really don't. So, kind of the thing with Dupree is I think Notre Dame's cooled on him a little bit just because I think there's like 2 key running back targets on the board for Notre Dame. I think it's Keidron Young out of Texas and then Anthony Carey out of Florida. Like, I think that's the 2 guys that they really want. So I think Dupree is kind of – I don't think Notre Dame's pushing hard for Dupree. Like, we'll just kind of leave it at that, right? Like, I think that's kind of where we are. Sean, I see that face with Sean. He's just like, what a mistake. I can see it.
No. It's just numbers, right? It's just numbers.
It's numbers.
We had this conversation, right? You know, as a program like a Notre Dame, you have kids – from an area like Chicago, that more than likely, if you gave the push, they would commit.
Yep.
Right. But you have, other running backs, like Keidron Young out of Texas, man. Like, you can't be mad with Notre Dame having him higher on the board. You can't.
Kid's good, man.
Like,
Kid's
what are you gonna do? You watch the film and you say, okay, I get it.
Yes.
And he might not choose Notre Dame. So now
you gotta get him to campus. He hasn't been on campus yet.
Right. So now you're battling, we really like him, so let's go battle for him.
Yep.
Or, take a really good play. Look, I feel good, right? This is the best of both worlds for me because as talented as the 24 and 25 classes are in the state of Illinois, whomever Notre Dame doesn't want, Brett Bielema can clean up. Okay?
Oh man!
So whoever Notre Dame doesn't want, I expect Brett Bielema to have some pretty good recruiting classes.
Could you imagine Darian Dupree in an offense similar to last year, Sean, with like Chase Brown and stuff? He'd be a pretty good player, man. Be a pretty good player. Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine it. Yes, I can.
Love it. So that's going to end the show today. Again, I want to thank everybody so much for joining us for a little bit of a recruiting update from this past weekend. We also talked some of Notre Dame's recent offers over this past week as well. And we hit a little bit of a mailbag. So if you missed any part of this show, go back and listen. I know we'll be back tonight, IB Nation Sports Talk at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to tap into that show with Sean Stiers and Vince, I believe, are the ones that are going to be on tonight. I'll be back with Brian Driscoll tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Also, make sure, Lucky Lefty Podcast, make sure to go subscribe, listen to Sean and Mr. Malik Zaire talk some ball, spin it differently, as they all say on that show. So from Ryan, that is Sean. Want to thank you all for joining us today on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour, a part of the Irish Breakdown Podcast.